across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you this Monday. How are you? I hope you had a good weekend. I have tissue in hand because although I've never in my life had hay fever before, I think that's what I've got now. Sniffly, sore eyes, all of the symptoms. So I apologise that I'll be sniffing my way through the programme, but I believe it is, for the first time ever, it is hay fever. I want to talk to you at midnight about these grooming gangs, or rape gangs, as they're more accurately called. Now the Prime Minister is calling in Britain's FBI to investigate after a dramatic U-turn on a national inquiry. Keir Starmer in full retreat on this. If you remember before, he said that that we were all sort of debating ourselves near to the far right if we were calling for a national inquiry. There has been a review carried out, and that review has made lots of suggestions, and Yvette Cooper, it seems, has said that the elite agency would now lead a major national operation to track down more perpetrators, and that for the first time they will start to register the ethnicity of the perpetrators. Now, some people might say that that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if a rapist is a rapist, right? But if we are seeing people from a particular group, a particular country, a particular culture, if you like, behaving in a way that is disgusting to us, then should we know about it? Do we have the right to know about it? Should we know the ethnicity of it? But the fear of that is that, say we are talking about these Pakistani rape gangs, there are an awful lot of very good Pakistani men and women in this country who would not dream of touching children in this way. So maybe that's why we're not given the information about ethnicity. But I think that perhaps we should know it. There are paedophilia in this country as a whole is perpetrated by white men. It's just those are registered, right? Not these gangs, but individually speaking, it is largely, factually, a white male crime. But with regards to the gangs, that seems to be different. That does seem to be a very different look. But the ethnicity of these gangs has not been recorded, and probably not recorded for fear of appearing racist. But why is it racist to register a truth, to register a fact? And I think things are really getting muddled up in this country as to it's racist to say that it's a brown person if it isn't a brown person. That would be right, to assume it was a brown person because of their skin colour. That would be racist. But a fact it in itself cannot be racist. It's just a fact. It's just a truth. And if it turns out that the majority of people involved in these rape gangs are white or are brown, then that's not in itself a racist comment, surely. But look, I want to ask you about this at midnight, and ask you if you feel that enough is being done about child sexual exploitation, whether you believe that this now gives you trust in this government, that children will be protected, young people will be protected in this country as far as these gangs go and as far as sexual exploitation goes and trafficking. Do you now have more faith? Or do you just see Keir Starmer again flip-flopping? Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you, particularly if you have any experience of this dark area of the country. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, I'm obliged to tell you, but we do call you straight back. So you can do that, and you can send me a message, 87222, put the word talk up front. You can also send me a WhatsApp message on 0344 499 1000, or if you prefer to leave your voice, you can leave that there as well. So those are all the ways to get in touch. Before that, we have the papers, and we have Phil Dave in the studio going through the papers for Tuesday. Beverly Lyons, our entertainment reporter, going through some of the entertainment news, and Alex Three Lions Irons is going to be going through the sport. But first, let's turn our attention to the G7 summit. And I've just seen breaking news that apparently Iran is saying it now wants to make a deal. I don't know how accurate that is, but we will keep an eye on that for you. But what I want to do is talk about the Israel-Iran conflict that has entered its fourth day, and the G7 meeting, the group of seven most wealthy countries who've been meeting in Canada alongside the EU, Ukraine, Mexico and India, have issued a short statement calling for a de-escalation. US President Donald Trump distancing himself from it ahead of the summit. Well, meanwhile, today, Israel's president said it had no choice but to attack Iran. In fact, they've gone further than that now and suggested they are attacking Iran on behalf of the rest of the world. Last night, Iranian missiles had again managed to get past Israel's Iron Dome, with 24 people killed in Israel since Friday. And Iran's health minister said that 224 people have died by Israeli strikes in the last 4 days. That number may have changed since this was written for me. Let's talk to Jason Pack now, who is an associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute and host of the Disorder podcast, a geopolitical podcast in collaboration with RUSI. First of all, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, good evening to you.
Hi. First of all, I did want to address what's going on with Israel and Iran, and we'll get to the G7 meeting in a little while if we can. What has been extraordinary for me, and it may seem like an odd place to start, but I'm so fascinated by, is Mossad and how that they seem to have been in Iran for some considerable amount of time. The operations there have been guided, they have been accurate, they've been able to track in real time some of the leaders of the Iranian military and kill them with laser sharp accuracy. This is something I don't hear talked about when we talk about the big scale of this, but this could not have been done, presumably, in short term. This has been planned for an extremely long time.
This operation has been planned for multiple decades. I kid you not.
Yeah.
We learned today that it was in 2008 that a given barrage of missiles was smuggled in a truck via Iraq and has been waiting in a garage since 2008 to be recovered by various Mossad agents. And that goes all the way back to a different government under Ehud Olmert. And then you're talking about the sophistication of the targeteering. Obviously, Mossad agents and other assets recruited by the Mossad have been tracking Iranian scientists, tracking the IRGC political leadership, and waiting for the moment to spring this operation. And then because of the good cop, bad cop with the Americans, particularly with Trump and Witkoff, the Iranians had their guard down and they thought that the negotiations were going to happen on Sunday in Muscat, Oman. And they were caught unawares. I mean, it is truly incredible from an intelligence perspective. I don't want to glorify war.
No,
but like with the pager attack, we have to tip our hats to something that was done truly excellently.
I mean, it's extraordinary. The reason I wanted to start at that point was, does that, therefore, since this has been planned for such a long time, make a lie of Israel's declaration that they had no choice but to attack now? Because they have known, as you said, they've prepared for this, they've been planning this. It seems to me that you don't plan for something that you've suddenly just realised you've got to do.
I'm not going to fully agree with you there, if you don't mind.
No, it's fine.
Netanyahu has been very consistent, and I'm no fan of his politically, but he's been consistent that the Iranian threat is existential but that he couldn't proceed without American green lighting and acquiescence. So he needed 3 or 4 conditions. One, he needed that the proxies of Iran, particularly Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas, were significantly weakened so that the Iranians couldn't activate them and, wreak untold damage on Israel. And the October 7th war has degraded Hamas and Hezbollah, and the Houthis have already fired a lot of their missiles. They may not be degraded, but they are not a threat that he's afraid that they're going to, for example, close the Red Sea, because they already did that. So they were preparing and preparing and preparing, and potentially Biden did give them the green light. I want to point this out. It was just on June 11th that an American CIA officer with the last name of Rahman was sentenced to jail for leaking Israeli war plans, which were exactly these war plans that were done, Petrie. And that was in 2023 that they were leaked for use in 2024. So yes, they were preparing for 15 or more years, but this was the only moment that the proxies were degraded, the Iranians were caught off guard, they had the green light of the American president, and the window was there.
Now, the president obviously knew about this sometime, that they were going to execute this attack, because we saw days before, even in some cases longer, American troops being moved. We saw, it's always a sign, isn't it? I always check to see what is going on that isn't making the news, because I know that that's going to be important. But then Donald Trump will say, well, I didn't want them to do it. I tried to. Is he lying?
Yeah, this is the good cop, bad cop. I mean, again, I'm no fan of Trump and Netanyahu, but they played this absolutely geniusly, because he gave them that 60-day window, the Iranians, and they had various meetings. And then Witkoff, his special envoy to the Middle East, dangled a carrot. Oh, we can meet in Muscat on Sunday for the 6th round of the negotiations. So it was past the 60-day window, but they had dangled this other meeting, and this was to keep the Iranians off guard. And again, I believe that to strike a good negotiation, you need to have leverage. And they used leverage in many ways. I might have done it differently, but you have to say that this was very sophisticatedly done, and probably more so than what, Biden or Jake Sullivan might have done to deter the Russians in January, February 2022, when they talked about having leverage and they did share intelligence, but they didn't really bluff in a way that would wrong-foot Putin. And the reality is that Trump and Witkoff bluffed and wrong-footed the Iranians.
Were they ever going to really reach an agreement with Iran, or was this always going to be the outcome?
Well, that's a great question. I'm actually having a podcast on Thursday on my Disorder Pod with an American State Department official who was the psychologist at the embassy in Moscow. His job was to do profiles of senior KGB agents. There are similar people at the agency who do profiles of Iranian IRGC commanders. I don't know them specifically, but some of them said that certain ones wanted to do a deal. If we go back to the days of Rafsanjani was amenable to a deal. Then Rouhani was not amenable to a deal. But then after the Mahsa Amani protests, and those are the woman who was killed for wearing the hijab, there was a lot of pressure on the Iranian regime. We in the West supported the protests. There was enough pressure that the Iranians might have been willing to do a deal at that moment. I think that they have felt that Trump is actually quite unpredictable, and they might have wanted to get him on their side because they didn't know what was going to happen. So I don't think that they would have fully given up their uranium enrichment, but they might have wanted to do a deal because they were afraid that this guy is so crazy and such a great negotiator, or a wild man, he might actually do it and blow up our centrifuges.
But it occurs to me that Iran were never going to be allowed to go any further than they have.
And one might argue, and nor should they have.
Yeah.
Because
fair enough,
they stated openly
Yeah.
We would like to destroy Israel and wipe all the Jews off the map. So there is a logic to the Israeli position, which I think mainstream media gets wrong. But your station, talkTV, is calling a spade here. There was a reason. This was not an unjustifiable fear.
No. No, I mean, absolutely not. But I'm just saying it seems unlikely that anyone would have allowed it. Makes a mockery of the whole idea of the negotiation, is what I'm saying. But I can understand why it happened.
The only thing I want to say there, Petrie, is the Iranians could have been restrained even if they wanted to break out. How do I mean? Sometimes, let's say I negotiate with you in bad faith in a real estate deal, but I can still get your building at a cheaper price and do the renovations that I want. So you can try to be outfoxing me, and yet I win in the negotiations.
Yeah.
I think that the JCPOA that Obama did was actually a great deal as a first step. And then it could have been buttressed by more things to make sure that the Iranians wouldn't have had breakout nuclear capacity. Now, that isn't what happened, right? I don't want to play counterfactuals, but there could have been a deal which could have restrained the Iranians' ability to break out.
Okay, let's have a look at I've just looked up at one of my screens, and it says that Iran wants a deal. Now, we know that the television and radio has been stifled. That means their propaganda machine has been silenced by Israel. I'm intrigued by this because I think what the West would like to see here is not just the removal of these nuclear sites right now, but the lack of will to recreate them somewhere else. Well, that's what's needed for the future. In order for that to happen, it occurs that you would have to have a popular uprising, as we've seen before, but was unsupported. If the people of Iran were to rise up against the Ayatollah and against the regime, that could set a path to a more decent future for Iran in the world. But that's not what countries like Russia want. They want this to stop now, surely.
Yes, you are pointing out something very important. The Iranians, when they say, oh, we will stop bombing Israel if they stop bombing us, are playing the media, and particularly playing the Western left. Oh, look, the Iranians are just peacemakers.
Sure.
Because everyone knows that the Israelis have a step-by-step plan, and it doesn't matter if you decapitate the leadership, take out the anti-aircraft, if you don't hit Fardo. You've got to hit with bunker-busting bombs the mountainous site under which the centrifuges are bombed. Yeah. That is the end game.
It's got to be everything or nothing. It's got to be all of it.
You and I might disagree on whether or not it needs to be continued till regime change, but any sane person knows if you initiate this campaign, which you've planned for 20 years, you've got to get the enriched uranium and the centrifuges. Ergo, and I don't know how this plays out, will the Americans lend lease them B-2s? Will they use the ground operation, as, for example, the head of Brookings Research Department said on CNBC earlier today? That was very interesting because I haven't thought about ground operations. But it has to culminate in the ability for Iranians to have breakout capacity to enrich uranium being destroyed. And the reality is, if that doesn't happen because there's some kind of ceasefire before that point, the whole thing was a waste.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the worry, isn't it? Because they can just start again. They've got the scientists, they've got the young scientists coming through, they've got the capability, they've got the centrifuge. This was a waste of time. Just quickly, I could talk to you all night, I really could. The G7 meeting that is ongoing, how much of a thorn in the side is Donald Trump? I can imagine there's quite a few people at that meeting not wanting to discuss very deep security with a man they don't trust anymore.
Oh, that's very interesting. I don't think they don't want to discuss things with him. I think that they merely want to each frame the outcomes in ways that they think he'll go for.
But Ukraine, for example, they did not tell America about that audacious attack they were going to make on Russian aircraft, right? They were concerned that Trump might spill the beans, or somebody, or Hegseth might.
And I wouldn't have told him either.
No, I wouldn't have
told him either.
I wouldn't tell him anything. But I'm just imagining now that, you know, Ukraine is there, South Africa is there, no great fans of Trump. Are they really going to want to discuss really sensitive security issues with a man that they don't trust.
But that's not what the G7 is about. The
But it
G7
will
is a
be about that.
multilateral attempt to build consensus. It's not about secret plans. And the Ukrainians, like the Israelis, pulled off an audacious and brilliant operation that they had probably prepared for a year or more as well. I just want to point out that Trump hates multilateral diplomacy. He believes in bilateral. I can get Zelensky in the Oval Office and I can either humiliate him or try to do my thing. Multilateral is that it's going to be everyone ganging up against him. Only Maloney on the G7 is sympathetic to him.
True.
And all the others, Sir Keir and Carney and the Japanese leader and Merz, are all going to be against him. And he doesn't like it because he doesn't know how to work the room there. So I would like to see that the other five, or other four, if you consider Maloney, in another position, that the other 4 or 5 say, you know what? If you do this on the tariffs, we'll help you on some of the Iran stuff, because these tariffs are just so destructive for the global economy. This G7 is an opportunity for genuine horse trading. And it's not a question of keeping secrets. It's a question of, he's a transactional man. He wants certain things. And if you can give them to him, maybe you can get the things that you want. I think that Keir actually is doing a great job, and that if he and Carney work together, I hope that we can roll back some of these tariffs and get some economic stuff moving.
Trouble is, the last time Trump was at the G7, he ripped up the agreement on the flying home. So I don't know if we can trust him on agreements either. This has been brilliant. Thank you. Please let's talk again. I really enjoyed that. Jason Pack, Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute and host of the Disorder podcast. That's a geopolitical podcast in collaboration with Rusi.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and coming up at midnight I want to talk to you about this inquiry into the group-based sexual exploitation, the so-called rape gangs. The question many will be asking is, will this report bring about meaningful change, proper change? For survivors of abuse who've had to fight hard to get their voices heard, on-the-ground change will now be vital. It needs to change. Voices need to be heard. Young people, young women who go to the police or have been to the police to report these things have been ignored. They have been dismissed because maybe they came from a rough neighbourhood or they looked like they were going to be trouble. That's no excuse. These were little girls, and in some cases boys, who were not believed. And we know that in places like Rotherham, there was such a fear about being called racist that the police didn't want to get involved, the councils didn't want to get involved, social services didn't want to get involved. But I fail to see how a fact can be racist. We've got so muddled in this country. We need to unscramble that. Because it could be that the majority of these gangs are white people, and if that is the case, then we deal with that. If they are brown people, then we deal with that. If it's a mixture of both, then we do, which it mostly is, then we deal with that. If it's more men than women, then we deal with that. It's not considered sexist to say they're men, that 76% of the perpetrators of these crimes are men. That's not sexist to say, is it? So how is it racist to say the truth if they are white or if they are brown or even if they're black? Why? How is that racist? And it may surprise you to know that they haven't been registering ethnicity with these rape gangs. And I think that's as important as gender. I think that what you should be doing is reporting all the facts, and then we can build a picture. But look, this is another U-turn by Sir Keir Starmer. Do you trust it? Do you believe that young people will be better protected in the future due to this national inquiry, due to suddenly, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, saying, oh, well, perhaps in future we'll register ethnicity. It's really important. Because if there is a certain cultural attitude to young British girls perpetrated by a group, two groups, three groups, then we can better protect those girls and get into the communities where those men are. If it's poverty that's driving it, I don't know, because we don't know, because there hasn't been a national inquiry. How much is this really going to protect our young? Give me a call. Let me know what you think about this. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Just a reminder that coming up, Beverly Lyons, our entertainment reporter, and also Phil Dave will be here to go through Tuesday's newspapers. But before that, we've got Alex, 3 Lions, irons. I've got Beverly Lions. I've got Alex 3 Lions irons. It's all going on.
It's a tongue twister.
It's a tongue twister today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fabulous to see you in the studio.
Yeah, it's strange being in. I used to come in here every week, and now it's a rarity.
I know, it's a rarity, but I'm so glad to see you. It's a nice treat.
Thank you.
Talk to me about the Club World Cup. I did have to say to Alex, what is the Club World Cup? And it's a world football tournament, but with clubs, not countries.
Yeah, so...
I should have known that, but for people who didn't know that, never assume.
No, never. Yes, exactly. Never assume.
Never assume.
So the Club World Cup is what it as the name suggests. It's the World Cup, but with clubs instead of with nations. It's with the teams that have won their equivalent of the European Champions League over the past 4 years. So there are not every club has not every nation or not every like footballing body has an equal amount of clubs. Like you've got the OFC, which is Oceania. They've only got 1 club taking part, whereas in Europe they've got 12. So it's different for. I think Europe gets the most clubs out of all of them. That also depends on the fact that but
they'll also be battling each other.
Yeah,
they don't come as a.
They don't come as a group, so they'll play teams from South America, which we've seen, teams from Asia and Africa and Oceania. We saw one of the biggest mismatches of the competition, I think, ever, since the new iteration, which has started this year, where Bayern Munich played Auckland City of New Zealand, the 4-time winner of the Oceania Champions League, who don't have any professional players.
Aww.
So as you turn up, as you'd expect, Bayern turned up and absolutely smashed them. They beat them 10-0. Auckland are one of the lowest ranked clubs in world football at this point. They're ranked around about, I think, 5,000th in the world, according to Opta Sport, whereas York City...
That is a little bit unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, according to Opta Sport, York City, who are in the National League, which is the 5th tier of English football, placed 3,000 places ahead of them. So they are twice as bad as York City in the National League.
Well, maybe they did well to only lose 10...
Yeah, it could have been more, but them being there, they were never expected to win in any of their games. They were in a pretty difficult group with Benfica and Boca Juniors. Boca being one of the biggest clubs in Argentina, Benfica one of the biggest clubs in Portugal, and then you've got little Auckland City who are there. But all the players are part-time. One of them's taking his exams in his hotel room. The manager can't be there because he's a dentist and he runs a dentistry, so the manager couldn't get time off to coach the team. So it's their assistant manager that's doing it while they're in the competition. Some of the players, all the players have had to get time off work.
They have to pay for themselves
to go over there. Some of them are doing it unpaid because the work wouldn't allow them to they've used up all their time off. So the fact that they're there, it does feel a bit unbalanced, but I love that they are there.
Yeah.
Because it means that it tells people, be like, hey, if you want to play, you can still play football at an elite level, even if you've got a part-time job. You see it in the FA Cup every year when low league clubs get to a first, second, third round. They might play a Premier League team, and you've got a teacher playing against, I don't know, Haaland from Manchester City. Yeah. That's the same level as inequality as we've got at this competition with Auckland being there. But I love it. I love it for that reason.
That is really cool, actually. And they probably, they'll be telling that story forever, right?
Yeah, they'll be telling that to their kids, their grandkids.
Yeah,
we played
Bayern Munich. Yeah.
I played in the team that lost 10-0 to Bayern Munich and lost, 5-0 to Benfica, or maybe drew 1-1 with Boca Juniors or whatever. So it's a great footballing story. It doesn't matter if they get a point.
It's the taking part.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they score. The fact that they're there is a fantastic opportunity for them.
And Chelsea got underway.
Yeah, they started their Club World Cup campaign tonight. They played LAFC in front of 20,000 people in Atlanta.
Is that Los
Stadium.
Angeles?
It was in Atlanta. So LAFC is Los Angeles Football Club. Right. They played the game at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, which holds about 70,000 people. They had about 22,000. Which isn't a good look when the stadium's more than half empty, but it was being played at 3 o'clock local time, and I think FIFA have expected people to treat this like the World Cup, where people go and watch games anyway, but people just aren't really as interested in this at the moment.
A lot of people as well are nervous to go to America.
Yes, for obvious
so there will be a lot of football fans who went, do you know what, I'm not going to do it.
A lot of people, not just from this country, but a lot of South American countries will be like, and African and Asian countries will go, we'll watch it on TV, we're not going to go.
We're not going to risk it.
We're seeing that with the World Cup, potentially with clubs who have already qualified for the World Cup, potentially not being able to have fans. Iran being one of them. I know they've got problems going on at the moment. Venezuela looked as though they could qualify for the World Cup. They potentially might not be able to have fans travelling to the World Cup next year because of Trump's travel ban. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I mean, I know that the Club World Cup, people have been instructed to carry their papers with them because ICE will be at these stadia. And so, you know, you've got to carry your tickets, your passport, your hotel reservation, your return ticket, all of those things, and you can still be swept up by ICE if they don't like the look of you. So I think that is not a good look for football. Not
just for the Club World Cup, but you've also got the Gold Cup, which is happening over in the States as well at the moment. And the Gold Cup is a CONCACAF tournament with the nations in North America. So you'll have clubs from, say, Mexico and El Salvador and all those kind of Guatemala, all those kind of nations that in Central America, where those fans who would go, and the ones that would live over in America who would go and support their team now won't go because they know that ICE could potentially be using those games as ways of tracking people down and taking them away, which
and
is
arresting
horrible.
them, and then you disappear. It's just, and that's pretty disgusting to use sport in that way, I think.
I think it's discussing what they've been doing as a whole, but in sport.
So do I. But in order, you know, to try and to get fans at that particular point, FIFA may have to rethink the World Cup, and they may have to, the Olympics may have to rethink the Olympics if this continues.
I think the World Cup, I think a year out, I think it will probably FIFA might just go, do you know what? We'll just bite the bullet and we'll
move it to Canada.
No, they'll probably just keep it where they are. I think FIFA an organisation where they'll stick with their guns.
They won't make the money from the.
No, they won't, but they'll be like, it's too late to move it now. Wow. Olympics is different. Olympics, you've got, 3 more years? If things keep going the way that they've been going, the Olympic Committee may move.
Well, there will be nations that will say we're not putting people forward to go to America.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that, and the travel ban is getting longer and longer and longer.
Yeah, but the World Cup, because you've got to qualify.
Yeah, true.
The teams might just go, OK, we pull out qualification. If they haven't already qualified, but teams are starting to. We've seen 2 nations qualify for the World Cup for next year who have never qualified before, those being Uzbekistan and Jordan. Whether those fans are going to travel over to America to see their clubs, I'm sure a lot of them would want to, but if things have been going the way they've been going, they might decide to stay at home, which is a massive shame because those countries have never been.
But the problem comes, doesn't it, if the football players decide not to go? If the clubs decide not, if the players,
the nations themselves will probably participate anyway. I don't think there'll be a nation that goes, we're not going to do it, because a lot of players would want to be there to represent their nation regardless. But if there are any that go, do you know what, I don't fancy being there, then players individually might pull out. But nations, I don't think nations will. I think a lot of them will say that they want to be there to represent their nation. They might
decide
if things get worse in the next year
for their people, though.
Potentially, if there are nations which are still on that travel ban, like Iran, like Venezuela, and a few others, that then say, do you know what, we don't want to be here because our people can't be here, then they might decide to do that. But I still think they might say, we know that you can't be here, so we're going to play our best for you at home. That's the only other thing I could probably see clubs doing, but I don't think, or nations doing, but I don't think any nation will particularly say we're not playing. If things get worse, maybe Iran, potentially, if the USA get involved with things going over in Israel, Iran might just say, do you know what, I know we've qualified already, but we're going to abstain from this World Cup.
Yeah, and sport is supposed to be so separate from politics, but unfortunately it gets all dragged in, doesn't it? Let's move on to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, so a bit of Lewis Hamilton finished 6th in the F1 in Canada on the weekend, but he had a rather upsetting time because while he was on the track, he hit a groundhog. While he was,
he literally
hit a groundhog.
Oh, I thought you meant like Groundhog Day.
No,
I see.
He
literally hit a groundhog.
He hit a groundhog on the 13th lap of the race in Montreal, that left a hole in the floor of his SF25
I expect it left a hole in the groundhog as well.
It probably left more than a hole. It's a pretty big hole for that groundhog, I think, unfortunately. But he was pretty upset with it. He's said, you know, he's a lover of animals and a vegan, and he doesn't want other creatures to suffer. And
God,
you know,
he's gutted, wouldn't you?
He was rather upset with things that were happening on the track in that sense. He finished sixth, had an okay race, but the race itself, you had George Russell. He felt like he said he feels like he's driving better than ever after winning his first race of the season at the Canadian Grand Prix. He hasn't won one since Las Vegas in November. So he's back on the podium.
Did Verstappen win by any chance?
No, he didn't. Max Verstappen did not win. George Russell won. So, and he's a Brit. So there you go. Happy days.
You go. Happy days. Talk to me about this FA ruling.
Yeah, so this was a bit of an odd story. So it was from a women's game, which happened a couple of weeks ago between Clapton Community Women and Dulwich Hamlet Reserves Women. It was a cup final in what is probably the longest name for a Football League association, the London and South Eastern Region Women's Football League Trophy. They had their final at Maidstone United's ground, the Gallagher Stadium, and that was abandoned after 25 minutes due to a Maidstone official having a bit of an issue with the flags and banners that both sets of fans were holding, those being Palestinian flags and flags about ending genocide and all this kind of stuff. And earlier in the week, there was that game was abandoned. The referee decided to ban it. It went to an FA hearing, and we found out on the earlier this week actually that the FA confirmed that no charges will be brought against Dulwich Hamlet or their fans for the abandoned final. That the flags and banners were not displayed by their supporters in any way that would incite violence or aggravation, but were displayed in solidarity and support. You've got to remember that both these clubs, both Clapton and Dulwich Hamlet, their fan base are very left-leaning. I went to a Clapton game in November of last year, one of their fans described, he said to me, if Dulwich Hamlet were like Keir Starmer, then Clapton Community Club are like I can't remember the other guys, Jeremy Corbyn. So they're very much like, if they're left wing, we're even further left wing. So both those clubs are not being charged for the abandoned game. The FA who reached the decision, are going to look into why that decision was made to abandon it. Dulwich are going to look at potentially replaying the game or giving refunds to fans and players that travelled down to Kent for the game. So there's a bit of an interesting one. There was a bit of an interesting reason for the game to be abandoned to begin with, because we see, Palestinian flags at games in Scotland and abroad, but the fact that someone has one
you're not
here,
inciting violence, then
which
this
they
is freedom
weren't, because both teams are coming together anyway.
It's freedom of expression. People are just getting very nervous at the moment.
Yeah.
Just like in 10 seconds, who won the underground?
The league was run by Overground, and then the cup was run by Northern Line. They beat Victoria 3-2 on penalties after a 3-3 draw.
Amazing. I just wanted to know who won. Northern Line.
Northern Line won the cup, Overground won the league.
Best football, worst line. That's brilliant. Thank you, Alex.
Pleasure.
It's lovely to see you in the studio. Alex, Three Lions, TalkSport presenter and producer.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here. Just a little reminder that Phil Dave will be here at the top of the hour to go through the papers for Tuesday. With me now though, it's Beverly Lyons, our entertainment reporter. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It feels like it's been ages, but
It really
enjoying
does.
a bit of heat here in Scotland.
Yeah. Well, not for long, it would appear. But there you go. We never know. Listen, Beverly, tell me about Timothy West, his final act of generosity. I love this man. And his wife, Prunella Scales, of course.
November he had a bad fall that resulted in his death eventually, but he has been incredible. You know, he's left in his will a huge amount to charities. There's 6 different charities that are going to get £10,000 from him. There's one that's getting £15,000 and there's one that's getting £5,000. The charities are the combined theatrical charities. They're getting the £15,000 for that. It's an appeals council that deals with all the kind of theatre folk and supports them. And then he's left like 10,000 each to the Bristol Old Vic, to the Theatre Royal Trust, to Southwark Cathedral, to the Snipe Charitable Trust, Médecins Sans Frontières, and then another 5,000 to the guide dogs for the blind. It's absolutely amazing because he's left, obviously, Prunella Scales has been left some money as well, but I think that's about the £29,000 mark, and he's also left to one of their sons £300,000 to help with home renovations as well. But, you know, isn't it just lovely to think of that, you know, when you're just thinking, how do I want to be remembered, but also how can I give back? And he's been such an incredible actor over the years. I mean, obviously he appeared in Corrie, he appeared in EastEnders, but of course he was also in Brass, which he was very well known for too. So legend.
I just loved him. Yeah, I just loved him, and I actually loved the programme that he and Prue did on the canals as well. I don't know if you saw any of that, but they were really avid sort of barge boat dwellers and travellers. But they were lovely, and they've been together for so long as well.
Yeah, a lovely showbiz couple, aren't it? It's nice when you see it work.
Yeah,
properly.
Absolutely. And I hope Prunella's okay. I know she's suffering with dementia, isn't she? So I hope that she's okay. What about really Lily Allen and Ed Norton dating?
Well, James Norton. So it's James
Norton. I was going to say, yes. I've got Ed Norton written down here.
So James Norton, obviously, he's one of the guys touted for the next Bond, James Bond film. He was in the Profumo Affair, which I watched recently on Netflix, actually, as well. He's been in so many different things. But he's single, and so is she, and they're both around the same age, around the 40 mark. So I think he's 39 and she's 40 or something like that. But they were both on the dating app Raya or Raya. It depends how you say it. It's potato situation. It's for the elite in dating. You know, you can only qualify to join this if you really got certain tick points for you. But of course, she split from her husband David Harbour in last year. I think it was December, and he was spotted on Rhea. She played her bit of detective. She did the whole sort of Agatha Christie act, Wagatha Christie, to find out what he was up to on Rhea, and she seems to think that he was being a bit unfaithful to her. And but she joined it, and James Norton joined it. He was on it as well. He split up. He was seeing a model. Of course, he had a longer relationship for many years with now who was it? It was Imogen Poots. In fact, I actually met them in the Malmaison in Glasgow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when they were there. And of course, he's actually filming in Scotland again, just now actually as well. He's been doing Sunny Dancer. So, but anyway, they both went to the Charlie XCX performance that was part of a big festival, a big sort of energy-saving Lido festival just now in Victoria Park, in your Victoria Park, not the Scottish Victoria Park that we've got here, where there's a circus right now. But yeah, they were seemed to be very cosy together, and they were both drinking non-alcoholic beer together. So it could be the perfect pairing. Who knows?
Oh, it could be. I wish them well. I also wish Justin Bieber well. He's finally admitted that he is broken, and we've been watching this unfold for some weeks or months now, and he's finally getting some help.
Well, we hope he's going to get some help. He says that he's got some very good friends. This is just, it's been a bit chaotic, his social media in recent months. He's been seen doing all sorts of things, sort of, you know, looking not all together with it. And his posts have become increasingly sort of erratic. He has said in his most recent one that he's had a fallout. He actually shared some screenshots between him and a male who is no longer his friend, saying, "I don't need you in my life. I'm ending this friendship. If you can't put up with me and my sort of moods and the fact that sometimes it gets a bit tumultuous, then you're no friend. I've got enough good friends. Part of friendship is conflict." This is what he's saying. And then he, as well as sharing that, he then went on in another post to say, you know, yes, I have anger. Yes, I have problems, you know, I've got issues, but I look to Jesus to help me with that. You know, he's quite a religious guy, Justin, in all of that. But he says, you know, he has been traumatized. He's recognizing all the things, which is great. But then, of course, many people are comparing this to a sort of Britney Spears style meltdown. And we hope that he's not going to end up in a similar place to Britney with that. So it's one to watch with Justin Bieber, because we hope that he is really surrounded by good friends. And by that, I mean friends that are actually looking after his mental health.
I mean, both of them, Britney Spears, is interesting, that parallel, both of them very young when they hit the stardom. And I mean, Bieber was a baby, wasn't he, really? There's obviously some trauma there that he's not worked through.
Definitely.
Beckham, Sir David.
That's right. The first time I'm saying it here on the telly. Sir David Beckham. And but meantime, of course, the conflict in his family runs on. It seems to just be part and parcel. You get so famous, don't you, that people scrutinise every move. And of course, having such a big family, there's this well-documented fallout with Brooklyn Beckham, a supposed fallout with Brooklyn Beckham, his son. David, of course, shared Father's Day pictures featuring Brookham, as well as Cruz and Romeo and Harper, all these other kids. But meantime, Brooklyn and Nicola Peltz, his wife, seem to be increasingly distant from things. Now, one of the reasons supposedly was that Kim, who was seeing his brother Romeo, according to sources, had also seen Brooklyn in the past. And this was given as one of the reasons why Brooklyn and his wife Nicole were staying away from the family, because, you know, she didn't want to be around one of his exes. Kim has now spoken out, the ex of Romeo has now spoken out and said, this is absolute rubbish. We never had an affair or anything like that. We were friends when we were 16 years old. It was nothing more than that. And Romeo has responded with that, saying, you know, there's no need for unnecessary lies and things like that. So it's all very messy. But meantime, Sir David is involved with his bees and isn't really getting too embroiled in this. He's just launched a brand new product called Bee Up, which is some sort of a health sweetie based on honey for kids that he's going to be selling in Target in the States and beyond.
Well, because he needs more money. I mean, that's the thing. I just put my feet up, I tell you. Just very quickly, Mariah Carey and her rider, her dressing room demands. Tell me, what does she want?
You know, I mean, we've had the 20 kittens before, haven't we? And 200 white doves or whatever. This time she was at the Capital Summertime Ball, and she insisted that all signs, all corporate signs, were removed from her dressing room, and that it simply said Mimi's World on it. And of course, also, she has said previously that she didn't want any unattractive dancers around her. She only wants hot guys. So there was that too. She's also said previously that, you know, heels are a must for her, you know, not flatties. And she's also said that she wasn't up for doing any selfies with people, particularly if the light's not right and all that kind of thing, and no photo rule. Meantime, we had Will Smith wandering around backstage and catering, minding his own business and just getting on with everybody that was in sight. So, but you know, I do think that Mariah Carey plays to that. I have met her, and she sort of had a giggle as she reminded somebody that was Mariah with the H, because they called her Maria in Scotland.
Oh dear.
Maria. And she was like, don't forget the H.
What would be on your rider? If you
well, it has to be cozy, but actually, that's a really good question. I mean, peanut butter. I love peanut butter. I know that.
Crunchy or smooth?
Crunchy. The crunchier, the better.
Yeah.
I love all that. A bit of Nutella as well. But that's not very exciting. Let me think of something really extravagant. I don't know.
You wouldn't want puppies, or I'd want puppies.
Oh yeah, I love puppies as well.
I'd want puppies, but then I wouldn't want to leave the dressing room. That's the problem.
I know that. I'd love a wee monkey as well, but I'm not sure how chaotic that might be.
You'd like a monkey?
I don't want to do the full Michael Jackson on it, and you'd have to put nappies on it, and it would be cruel. So I think that would be out.
Yeah, no monkeys.
Yeah, toy monkey instead.
Just puppies. So when you get to the point where you need, you know, your own rider, I'll be the puppy handler for you. I'll come along.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I'm going to release a song and I'll tell you all about it when it's ready.
Brilliant. And then I'll just be your puppy handler. That's my job.
Fantastic.
This is lovely to see you, Beverly. Thank you very much indeed. Beverly Lyons, entertainment reporter. Right, stay where you are, because coming up we are looking at the papers next with Phil Dave.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it is Petrie, and it's good to have your company. And with me, Phil Dave.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry,
how
I was enjoying the music. It sounds like you're on some sort of
children's
classical
program.
station or
no,
something.
It sounded like do.
Oh, children.
Oh, here's Auntie Petrie.
And today we're going to be looking through the square window.
That's what it sounded like. Rubbish. Anyway, I shouldn't really
I was
comment.
rather enjoing it.
Yeah, well, maybe you're a
Sorry.
child.
I think you know that.
I think I do
definitely
know
a child
that.
at heart.
I definitely know that you're a child. Right. Before we get into the papers, I just want to talk to you quickly about this Baroness Louise Casey's report into the group-based sexual exploitation, and the fact that in this report it absolutely pulls no punches. She says what is going on. She makes recommendations within it. This, of course, has seen a capitulation from Sir Keir Starmer, and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is saying, right, we are now going to have this inquiry. Do we believe their heart is in this?
No,
do we believe
not
that
at
the
all.
inquiry will be as fulsome as it needs to be?
Well, you see, here's the problem. I think if it weren't for this report, then we'd still be stuck in this rut of we're not going to be having an inquiry. I really believe it's simple as. It's only because that actually it's how bad it would make them. I mean, they look pretty bad as it is, but how bad any politician would look if they didn't support an inquiry. And just to sort of set my stall out, I personally don't believe in inquiries. I believe in justice. That's my gut tells me, because I often think that the public can get quite bogged down with inquiries, but it's almost a diversion from actually getting on and punishing those who are responsible for this. And here's what really sticks in the craw for me, is I was thinking about it. What does it say to those, and I'd rather not use the word victims, but just so we're understanding who I'm talking about here.
Survivors, yeah.
Survivors is probably a better word, but let's just say victims to those who don't understand who I mean. What does it say to them that their own government doesn't want to do everything within its power to help them and to protect them and to compensate them for what they've been through? I just can't even begin to imagine what that must feel like.
I mean, look, these girls, mostly girls, have been ignored, disrespected, been called liars, been called sluts, been by police, councils, social services, and their own government. I mean, I don't think they called them sluts, but certainly the police were of that view in certain cases. Oh, she's just a throwaway girl. There is no such thing as a throwaway child. There is no such thing. And because these children came from poorer backgrounds, perhaps didn't have the right words or the right education or the right support from family, they were completely disregarded, sometimes worse than disregarded. You know, some of them were arrested. You know, I mean, this is disgusting, and this is what I hope an inquiry, although we know this, right? We know it already. Will stop. We'll just treat these people. I mean.
But this is kind of the point, is it's kind of going to tell us what we sort of already know.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people have been saying for a long time, and what a lot of people who were crying out for an inquiry were called far right, and those because apparently they were just picking on minority groups. They're not picking on minority groups at all. They're highlighting the fact that certain people from very different cultural backgrounds have used that as an excuse to behave in the most revolting way in this country's eyes. And it's very simple.
Actually protected because of their ethnicity and cultural background, as opposed to had it been, it's the reverse of racism, if you like. Had they been white men, then the police may have acted and council may have acted and the social services definitely would have acted quicker.
But
because they were Pakistani men, in the Rotherham case that we're discussing, they were given almost a free.
But this is one of the best arguments I can think of to suggest as to why multiculturalism doesn't work. But multi-religion, you have as many religions as you want under one umbrella, go for it. There are plenty of countries that have multiple religions. Hello, the UK is one of them. There are plenty of religions practiced here. But when it comes to cultural differences, and in terms of sort of what might be acceptable in another country that is absolutely not acceptable here, the government of this country should not be protecting, the authorities of this country should not be protecting those based on what their cultural beliefs are, just because it's what they do back when they have.
Absolutely.
It's just
and
horrendous.
Ignorance has never been a defence
Until now.
in law. It's never been a defence. It shouldn't be. Ignorance of the laws of the country you're in is not a defence, which is why we've got so many Brits locked up abroad at the moment, because it isn't a defence to not know something. But it is. Multiculturalism has been debunked. It as a system, it doesn't work. I mean, I think it was even Trevor Phillips has said, look, multiculturalism doesn't, multi-religion, multi-ethnicity, bring it on. But that has to be under one legal framework. It has to be under one cultural framework in order for it to work properly.
And it just so happens that this country's framework is, like many countries in the West, is fundamentally based on Christian beliefs. That is where the law stems from. And in a lot of cases, you know, if you don't want to bring religion into it, you could actually just say it's common sense. I mean,
of course it's common sense. I prefer
thou shalt not kill, no kidding. Yeah. But the point is that it is ultimately what the law of this land says. And if someone doesn't want to abide by those laws, don't live here. It's really not difficult to understand.
Listen, I absolutely agree with you, and I think it is an outrage that the ethnicity of these rape gangs hasn't been recorded. It's only been discovered by reporters and by people who've been looking at the numbers and number crunching, because it was never given to us officially. And while saying that, the ethnicity that is most likely to commit a paedophilic attack is a white man. I mean, that is the fact. You look at all the numbers. But in these gangs, that's different. And that hasn't been recorded. So at least from now on, that will be recorded.
Do you know, there was something truly fascinating about hearing the Home Secretary squirm as she delivered that speech in the Commons over this particular inquiry. And one of the things that she discussed was indeed the ethnicity of these gangs. But to counter it and to show how terrified people still are to call something for what it is. I nearly said an expression that's banned.
I'm so glad you didn't.
To say it as it is, right? It's very simple. You know, she actually had to counter it by saying, but of course there are plenty of people from those minority groups who also find this disgusting and find it disturbing. You didn't need to say that.
Didn't we know
they
that?
know that.
We all
absolutely
know that, right?
know.
We know that there are bad people in every group of people. I just think that the fact that I was saying earlier on, Phil, that a fact isn't in itself racist.
No.
So the fact of these men who were caught and found
facts
guilty
out might be racist.
Absolutely. But a fact cannot be racist. It is just a fact. It is what it is. And so why these councils and police officers were squirming, that is just warped thinking, because a fact isn't racist. It is just what it is. Whether it be a white person, a brown person or a black person, we need, these are just facts. They are not racist. It is racist to assume that somebody who perpetrates this is of a certain ethnicity. That's racist. It is not racist if you have the facts in front of you. And that's where we are in this country at the moment, that somehow facts don't matter.
So you know that a lot of what I do work-wise involves actually training the next generation of production staff. Yeah. And one of the things I try to teach is the difference between what constitutes offensive language versus actually what is just factually accurate.
Yes.
And the example that I usually give is that if you were to say, and before anyone writes any letters, I am of Jewish heritage, so I don't want anyone complaining about this, but I say it is factually accurate to say that in Golders Green, which is an area of London, it is densely populated with religious Jewish people, right? That is fact.
Fact.
But the difference between saying something that is fact and offensive is if someone turns around and says, I won't go to Golders Green because of that.
Yeah.
And that is the reason, the difference, if you like, between something that is stating factual, just fact, versus saying something that could cause deep offence.
Yeah, and we seem to have got bogged down and confused and it's poisoning the water for all of us. Excuse me.
It's also making people terrified to speak out. You know, I wouldn't be surprised, and I have no proof of this, by the way, before anyone holds me to it, but I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if part of the problem of so many of these survivors, as we'll refer to them, not coming forward potentially, is because they thought that sort of the way they'll be treated, or possibly even accused of racism.
Of course. Without any doubt, I would suggest that would be the case certainly in the northern gangs. I don't have many hopes for the inquiry, but let's hope something changes.
Well, as I say, I think it's kind of it's a gesture. If you see it, I don't actually believe...
It's a little bit too little, too late, isn't it? Really.
Well, I know. What was it? Wasn't there sort of some other inquiry? It took about 7 years to get absolutely nowhere, or something like this. The inquiries don't do anything.
They cost hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, and they don't go anywhere. Right, let's have a look at the USA Today before we go into a break. Top story: Trump's parade could be a pivot point. Did you watch that parade?
I personally did not. I'm aware of it, but I did not. This is obviously a sort of celebration of the army, wasn't it? The 250th.
Yeah, that could have been held any day this year, but was held on his birthday.
Well,
it could have been on July 4th.
Think of the amount of money that they saved by combining the party.
Well, nobody turned up. So it was a party. It was a £40 million party for about 8,500 people. In fact, it's reported that there were more soldiers walking, not marching, than there were actually in the crowds.
Oops.
And I think he's been embarrassed by this. Trump's military parade on the same day as we had Trooping of the Colour as well, which we do beautifully, don't we? I mean, there's nobody better. Sorry. There isn't. But we've been doing it for decades.
Pomp and circumstance is brilliant.
It's not something that America does, but you look at the way the Chinese do it, Russia does it, North Korea does it, and we do it brilliantly.
I have to say, I mean, as much as I'd hate to be compared to North Korea, it is true that the North Koreans know how to do things with military precision.
Because they've got no choice, and the crowds have got to say they've got to be there.
They've got to say they've got to turn up and love it.
Yeah, it's June the 14th parade itself turned out to be a damp and relatively low-key affair. Thousands of spectators lined a stretch of Constitution Avenue in Washington with on and off drizzle to applaud slow-moving procession of troops, tanks, drones, a robot dog. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing.
Maybe it was the weather.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that wet. The parade may prove less consequential than the No Kings marches. Did you see those? They were extraordinary. Latest numbers: 10 to 11 million Americans out on the streets,
well,
and they're going to get bigger for July 4th. They're going to do it again. Amazing. Jailbreak a month ago leads to city to look inward. New Orleans, they waited until after midnight to make their move. There's nearly 1,400 inmates. That's bad, isn't it? In the sprawling New Orleans jail, slept 10 men, slipped quietly from the metal bunks. A worker monitoring their tier by surveillance camera went on a break.
Oy, oy.
I mean, that's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, it kind of begs the question, why is there not more than one person? And if one person needed a break, of course you should have someone else to take over from that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why have them in the first place?
And then literally just waiting for him to go to sleep and then walking out.
Inmates knew that they were on a break. That's what's quite scary. I mean, you've got to hand it to them. They clearly know the way that the place is run.
Yeah, and 10 of them literally just walked out.
How very reassuring. Well, mind you, actually, I suppose at least, they had to go through some process to get out. Over here, we just let prisoners out.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And they're met with fast cars and champagne.
Yeah.
Let's take a break before we go through the British papers.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it is Petrie, and it is also Phil Dave. We had a message for you.
Dear.
Guess who it's from?
I'm going to... Does it begin with a G?
Yeah.
There we go.
Evening, Petrie. So chuffed to see the booty scrum-diddly umptious Mr. Phil Dave on Tonight with you tonight. Brilliant show. I love that. Booty scrum-diddly umptious.
I wouldn't mind if I thought it was true, but anyway.
You are blushing.
I am really, honestly. It's very embarrassing, but it's very flattering at the same time. Thank you.
Very sweet.
I didn't get into radio to be seen, but thank you.
I know. Well, yeah. Right, let's start with the papers for Tuesday. The Independent, too much denial, too little justice. This, of course, is talking about the rape gangs. Clear evidence of over-representation of Pakistani men amongst suspects, report finds. Failure to record offenders' ethnicity was appalling. Children and teenage girls were blamed for crimes against them. And government issues fresh apology for damning findings and will review old cases. Now, listen, Sir Keir Starmer was a QC at the time, Queen's Counsel. He did know about this. He must have known about this. You're not telling me the Queen's Counsel didn't get, all the stuff coming forward, but they're going, fresh apology for damning findings, and we're now going to review it.
Yeah, because apologies are going to really make it go away, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you know, I tell
These
you what
poor
I
girls'
find...
lives have been ruined.
I tell you what I find particularly horrendous about this. I mean, apart from everything, one thing I find particularly horrendous is that in the failure to record offenders' ethnicity, that had to be a deliberate move. And I'll tell you for why, is because how many everyday occurrences now do we find where we are asked to fill ethnicity in order to ensure that the country is behaving in a balanced and fair way? You go to a doctor's surgery and register there. They ask you for your ethnicity. Now, don't people tell me that this is just to do with medical. It might be partly to do with medical, but it's also to
No,
make
it's
sure,
everything. You have
it's
to.
also making sure they're balanced.
In everything, you have
Job
to.
applications, you have to fill out an ethnicity survey just to make sure that they're being fair. There is so much in the way of the examples that we could sit here and list as to why we have to list ethnicity, and yet for this, where it actually matters and really matters, miraculously it was left off. I just find that incomprehensible. It is inverted racism, without doubt.
Yeah.
It's just horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been. Well, we know that the way that the police and the council and social services were concerned not to be seen as racist. And like I said, a fact cannot in itself be racist. A fact can be used against certain races, but in itself it is not racist. So this to me this was a major, not just mistake. This was, like you said, a deliberate policy, so as, I presume, so as not to inflame tensions between communities.
Big mistake. Because guess what? It's inflamed it even more now.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it always does, doesn't it? I mean, you leave something to fester.
But that is what racial segregation does. This is why I hate it. Living in a world where we highlight differences actually will never encourage people to come together, because instantly it's a red flag to say that person's different to you, and therefore you don't have anything in common with them. We should never be highlighting racial differences, ever, ever, ever.
No. Very interesting as to know which way the country's going to go with that, what's going to happen. Again, the story on the front page of the Metro, I suspect that most of it... Sorry, my nose is so itchy, I'm really sorry. I think I've got hay fever.
Oh.
Oh.
I wasn't sure.
I've never had hay fever before.
No, but you know that the last few days the pollen has been exceptionally high.
So
even those who don't get hay fever have really been feeling the pinch. So, for example, with me, I know I've been sneezing non-stop over the last few days. I don't feel ill. I've just been sneezing a lot.
No, I just can't.
So
I mean,
definitely
my
something
eye
in the air.
sockets hurt.
Oh.
And then my nose is itchy. But apart from that, so I'm sorry.
It's a shame you're not. It's a shame your palms aren't itchy, because apparently that means
That
you're
means
coming
money.
into money.
Oh no! Which palm is it?
Oh, is it?
The right hand is money coming in. Left hand is money going out. I think.
Oh, bother.
Oh, there you go, money going out. Right, the Metro, here we go. Asian grooming gang. I thought we weren't calling them grooming. I thought we were calling them rape gangs now. I'm very disappointed by this. I think I've seen on our own tag, if we could change that, please. Blindness, ignorance, prejudice and defensiveness. The Home Secretary has apologised to these victims as she published a damning report that blamed authorities for turning a blind eye to sex crimes through fear of appearing racist.
I think we should also point out as well, though, that we shouldn't overlook the fact that the reason how so much rape has been allowed to be committed is because of the grooming element as well. You know, as much as absolutely rape gang is a more appropriate way of referring to these cretins, we shouldn't forget the grooming plays a massive part, because again that sort of highlights how those.
But the rape is the violence.
Of course, it's horrendous. But you know, where the rape is the physical violence, the grooming is the mental violence.
Yeah.
You actually literally break someone apart in order to be able to manipulate them into thinking that what you're doing to them is okay.
It's absolutely horrifying. Let's see the FT. Israel claims control of Tehran's skies, and it's quite an extraordinary operation that the Israelis have carried out here. And although I'm clearly anti-war, you have to look to see how Israel has carried this out, and it's the implanting of Mossad, who are probably the best in the world in terms of secret services, but they've been implanted in Iran for apparently decades, planning for this, and they have carried out laser sharp attacks. They have disabled most of the ballistic missiles, and I don't know if you know this, but Iran has the most missiles in the region.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the world, but I'm sure it's not. But it certainly amongst the highest.
It really is. But they've disabled most of it. Iran now suggesting, according to what I saw earlier, that they want peace talks.
Yeah, funny that. Look, I could sit here for a very long time. You know that I have an enormous fascination with Middle Eastern politics and conflict. And I do spend a lot of time reading about it, researching it, and trying to get as balanced a view as possible. But I can also appreciate that some might think that, given that I did declare earlier on of being of Jewish heritage, that I might find it quite tricky to be impartial with this. But
yeah, I'm not expecting you to be impartial.
But I can be. Okay. And I tell you how I can be, is because if you conflate what a lot of people conflate, where they say about settlements, say for example in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank as some people refer to it as, I don't agree with that at all. That's actions taken by the Israeli government to deliberately build on disputed territory. I think it is a mistake, I think it's provocative, and I think it's very, very wrong. So let me declare that straight away. But when you look at the situation in Iran, where people believe that this is an attack that was completely unprovoked, then I'm afraid they simply don't understand the situation that's going on in that part of the world. Iran and the leadership, the Ayatollah of Iran, has for a very, very long time said that they want nothing more than to see Israel wiped off the face of the earth.
Absolutely.
Openly.
But also they've been using proxies to do that, so this isn't unprovoked.
Totally and utterly. So the proxies is another matter altogether, but you're quite right. Of course they have been using proxies. The proxies in the form of Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis, and also, of course, Hezbollah in the north. So all of these different proxy armies, if you like, which have now been so weakened that actually this is why Tehran is potentially about to fall, is because that for so long Tehran have, if you like, outsourced their violence against Israel and that part of the world. And can we just make it really clear, Israel is their starting point. They're violent towards their own people, for crying out loud. Right? The way that women are literally killed if they take headscarves off.
I know.
Okay, so let's not pretend that these are lovely people. They're not. They're vile. Okay, absolutely revolting. But if you've got a country that openly says they want to destroy another, and they are in the process, thanks to an agreement made by President Barack Obama, that they are openly and vastly building a nuclear armament, who do you think is going to be the first target? I don't blame Israel for doing what they've done. In fact,
Well,
on the
I
contrary,
heard them saying that they're doing this on behalf of the world because an Iran with nuclear weapons is not going to be fun for anybody.
No.
But now Iran, of course, are talking about leaving the nuclear proliferation treaty
because they've been shown up for how weak they are.
But also they weren't really obeying it anyway, so it doesn't look. The only concern is, and I don't know if you heard the interview I did earlier on at 10 o'clock. The only concern is that if Israel has not completed the job of ridding with these underground bunkers all of the ability to scale back up and re-engineer nuclear weapons, and they've been getting help from Russia, from China and North Korea on this. They've got the skills now. This is just a delay tactic. This was for nothing.
Within reason, because what this does...
It genuinely, it's for nothing.
Well, only within reason, because what this does is send a very clear message that if a country decides to think that they can mess with Israel in this way, they will pay a very sorry price for it. Now, in terms of Tehran, I'm not personally sort of too concerned. I do believe when Netanyahu says that they are very close to victory, that actually they are. What they have achieved in a matter of days is really quite extraordinary and seriously damning to Iran, because what it's actually done is demonstrated how they are all blustered. They really are just full of hot air.
I think, again, the general consensus is that Iran were expecting to prolong the idea of negotiated talks with the US. And I think they were on the back foot. But the most, I say impressive in terms of when you break down war and when you look at, I'm not saying I'm impressed because I love it, but is what Mossad have done. And there is absolutely no doubt about it that was brilliantly pulled together. I mean, they've hidden weapons there for decades. They've got these people on the ground. They've managed to recruit other people. They've been able to in real time follow the leaders of the military, of the scientists, and take them out one by one.
Those who are leading the nuclear program are pretty much annihilated. They're pretty much gone.
But it has been, and also, if people go, "Oh, that's not something to be applauded," it isn't. But the opposite to that is in bombing a hospital because you think a scientist is in there and killing everybody that's in there. What Mossad have done has gone after these in laser point accuracy, and that has saved a lot of lives in Tehran.
All I can say is thank God we will never know the alternative outcome if Iran had been allowed to develop nuclear weapons of the way they were carrying on.
Yeah.
Because believe me, if Iran had gone nuclear, the Western world that we know and love wouldn't exist for much longer.
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, what a world. I just get used to one war and then there's another one to look at. Let's take a break. Phil and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me Phil Dave, Talk broadcaster and editor. Let's turn to the Sun newspaper. Is it Royal Ascot already? Is that this weekend? Ascot, I should say.
It's incoming.
Actually. Tomorrow. Why doesn't it happen at the weekend?
I don't know, maybe the horses...
Rich people don't...
Maybe horses like the weekend off, I don't know.
All right, but rich people don't worry about weekends, do they?
Well, I don't know. Because I'm not rich, I don't know.
They don't work. So Ascot, there we go.
For as long as I can remember, I've worked the weekends, so, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
They don't exist.
No.
So anyway, that's what's happening this week. And again...
How do you feel about horse racing, actually? Because I'm not going to pretend to be the biggest fan of it, you know.
It won't surprise you to know I used to take part in point-to-points.
Fine. Next, move on.
Yeah. Craft and Pony Club. No, but
okay, so here's the
I don't like steeplechase. I don't like steeplechase.
I think it is better than it used to be. You know, I'm not really sort of completely convinced that riding crops are necessary. That's just my humble opinion.
No, many people. But there is a rule about overuse of crops.
Yeah.
So you're not allowed to overuse your crop, and if you are, you can be disqualified. I don't like crops.
Also aware that obviously the treatment the horses get when they're not being raced,
they're like
is probably
babies.
a heck of a lot better than any wild horse could ever dream of.
Look, they do love to race. I used to. Heseltine had a racehorses near where I lived. So when I was a little girl, he would have a lot of racehorses that had to go out and be exercised. So I would be part of a group of us that would go and exercise the racehorses. And they're not even fully broken. I mean, they are wild. So they're blooming fast, and they need a lot of exercise and a lot of running and a lot of. They love it. They absolutely love it. I don't like racing over sticks, though. I think I don't because jumping is really quite difficult.
To mention the number of horses that have fallen at hurdles.
Yeah.
And have ultimately had to lose their life.
Yeah, I don't like it. Their legs are so brittle. No, listen, I don't like it over sticks, but I think horse racing on the flat is superb. Yeah,
I like jockeys, though, because they're the only people who make me feel tall.
Yeah. They are tiny. But yeah, so Ascot is coming up. I won't be going.
That's why I don't like basketball players.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They're just too tall.
Too tall.
Too tall.
Far too tall.
The Sun, okay, that covers again the betrayal by the state for grooming gangs. The Telegraph, lovely picture there of Kate, Princess of Wales, laughing, having a good old giggle.
Isn't it nice to see her healthy again?
Yeah. Really.
I mean, I don't know how, obviously, the state of her health, you know, she may still be under very close observation.
Well, it's just nice to see her out and about, isn't it?
It's nice to think that she can sort of get on a bit as normal now, a bit. But it's weird how, you know, we often sort of think of the royal family as being sort of almost borderline indestructible just because of who they are and what they represent.
Yeah.
But actually, there's the most shocking number...
Well, cancer does not...
No, I know, but there's the most shocking number of royals that actually have had cancer. You know, not least of all her late Majesty. Yeah. I know she never really spoke about it, but it was revealed after she died that she did have it. Even her father, you know, King George VI, he also had cancer. That's how he died. He died of lung cancer.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And yet you've got His Majesty the King currently going through it. Catherine, Princess of Wales, is also sort of just on the tail end. Fergie as well. Absolutely, it's shocking how many are actually affected by it.
Yeah. The other story on the front page of the Telegraph, asylum seekers behind new grooming gangs. Baroness Casey reveals large proportion of open investigations involve non-Britons, and there will be, this is where the FBI, the British FBI, is going to start going after these gangs now, is my understanding. So they're not waiting for the end of the inquiry.
Well, I mean, the opening paragraph, it says asylum seekers and foreign nationals are involved in a significant proportion, quote unquote, of live police investigations into child grooming gangs. It's just, oh God.
Yeah, I know.
This world.
It's just horrendous. I mean, in what country is it okay to rape a child anyway? It isn't. So
In what country is it okay to even look at a child and think of that? Just what the heck is wrong?
So these are just sick. Are they just sick people who happen to come from a culture, or is the cult? I don't know. This story caught my eye though at the bottom here. Scotland to dump its bin bags in England.
Great.
We don't want your bin bags.
We want your salmon. We want your whiskey. Go away.
And your humour and your kilts.
I don't want the kilts. It's too drafty.
Quite like a Scottish man.
Oh, far too drafty.
SNP is to dump its 100 truckloads of rubbish in England each day after a landfill
ban.
Yeah.
So what? So it's okay for them to ban landfill in Scotland, and then they come and sort of pour it all into England.
Yeah. Was it in the Lake District? Is that what they're going to do? Start filling up the lakes? I don't know what they're going to do.
Oh my goodness.
The government has banned black bin bag waste from being buried in landfills north of the Scottish border.
This is unbelievable.
June 31st this year?
It will be after December 31st.
Oh, December 31st. Sorry, the print on this is not good.
But Scotland does not have enough
incinerators to manage the waste.
Oh my goodness.
Which experts have said could amount to 400,000 bags? No, I can't see that.
No, 400,000 tonnes.
Tons. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So thanks, Scotland. Sorry.
And how is that okay?
How is that a thing?
Could you imagine if it was the other way around? Could you imagine
we should do it the other way around.
But could you imagine if England was to turn around and say, actually, we don't want anything in our landfill site. Sorry, Scotland, you're going to bear the brunt of that.
Well, we just dump it.
The outcry.
There's loads of room in Scotland. There's all that countryside.
Can't we just make one of the new, like maybe a new mountain in the Highlands out of all of the waste?
Right next to Ben Nevis.
Just put some grass seed over it. They won't know.
Right next door to Ben Nevis. You'll never know the difference.
Bin Nevis.
Bin Nevis.
There you go.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Ben Nevis and Bin Nevis. I like
Got it. We've sorted it. We've solved the problem.
We've got it done. Right, let's move on. The Daily Star. Reservoir dregs. Hosepipe bans are now a dead cert after Yorkshire was declared in drought. Say bookies. I think that the hosepipe ban in Hammersmith and Fulham is still standing from last year. I don't think they ever lifted it.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say...
We've had more rain than I know what to do with, though.
This weekend just gone...
I've got butts.
Well, there's no answer to that.
I have two butts, big butts.
Big butts.
I
You
have
like
two
big butts.
big butts.
This weekend just gone for Father's Day.
Big butts, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I thought that's where this was going, and now I thought I'm in the twilight zone. This Sunday just gone, obviously being Father's Day, and part of that, my family went to a little area near the River Thames, and as we were driving past one part of the Thames, we noticed that there were some families who were sort of walking what should have otherwise been normally full of water, but actually just walking on this dry land. And we realised it's because that part of the Thames had dried up quite a lot. So
the Thames is the most tidal river in the world.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I thought it must be more tide related more than anything.
Because you get lots of parts of the Thames, certainly depending on where you are, certainly sort of the west west end of the Thames, where you get vast areas of sandbank.
Yeah, this is where we were in the west.
Yeah, so. That's tidal. That's tide.
It wasn't a million miles actually from you.
It goes out, yeah. So it's tidal because I know that part of the river really well, where you were. So yeah, that's tidal. It goes out such a long way.
It's just bizarre.
And I remember when my son was christened. He was christened at St Barnabas Church, which is down in Twickenham, not Twickenham, Chiswick. So near the brewery, the Fuller's Brewery there. No reason. And a lot
That's literally where we were.
I knew from what you were saying that's where you were. I knew it.
That's literally the place we were. Anyway, never mind.
Anyway, that's where my boy was christened, and a load
Lovely
of
church there.
lovely church, and there were loads of my friends that came and parked on that. You know that road that you would walk.
Yeah,
walk
that's
down?
the one we were walking down.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the road. So beautiful houses there.
Stunning.
Stunning.
I was
Love
looking at that
part.
genuinely. I was thinking to myself, why on earth doesn't London look more like this?
It's beautiful down there. It's absolutely beautiful.
It looked like a
And,
village. You know, like it sort of reminded me of,
beautiful.
like, you know, when you're driving in the middle of the Cotswolds
Yeah.
or something.
It's stunning.
It looked a bit more like that.
And they've got there's the houses, the road, and then their gardens leading down to the river. It's absolutely stunning. Anyway, my friends all came and parked along that road, and the river was, you know, right out like you're describing it, and we went to the church, did the christening, went to the party, which was at the godmother's house just across the road, and by the time they went back to their cars, they'd been flooded because the river had come back in. And there was a friend of mine around, I think he had an MG at the time, and he said he opened the door and all this dirty river water just flooded out. And next time you walk along that road, you'll see signs saying, check the tide if you're going to park here.
Oh, okay, and interesting.
So
No,
don't ever park
I didn't park there. For what it's worth, we actually parked slightly more sensibly.
Oh, right.
But yeah.
Yeah, if you park on that road, you have to know the tides, because it can come right the way up. And all of those big houses have the tidal gates. They have these big metal, you would have noticed them, where you can slip in a big metal plate where the gate is. Otherwise, they flood. The houses flood. It's a beautiful part of town. Anyway, reservoir dregs. So we haven't been
Sorry, I digress.
we haven't been
Anyway.
saving water enough, have we, in reservoirs and things like that. The I paper again. Generation of girls let down by police, councils, and MPs who ignored UK groom gangs. And this is the thing. It is not just one of these groups of people that let these girls down. It is everybody. It's everybody.
It's like a concerted effort almost.
It's like a conspiracy that they were all protecting the perpetrators of this and not the girls that were being attacked. I mean, this is MPs at the time, this is everybody at the time, and Queen's Counsel and the lawyers, all of them are guilty.
Look, I totally and utterly don't think you necessarily have the answers to this, but just out of interest, why do you think that is? I know what I think, but why do you think that might even be the case?
I think it was a warped sense of fear, of appearing racist, and of causing community unrest.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I also wonder whether or not there's partly because of resources and whether or not there was the resource to deal with it.
No, there would have been. I mean, had these been rich white girls from posh private schools, or even just the middle classes, I think more attention would have been paid to them. I think it was a combination of these girls came from, you know, less than favourable backgrounds. They were vulnerable because of that. They didn't have the education necessary. They didn't have the support perhaps at home. They had, not that they were abused at home, but perhaps they had parents that were both working because of poverty. I think there's a lot of poverty involved here. And I think that if it had been a different demographic of girls, then a different outcome would have happened. That's what I believe.
Guess we'll never know. Can I just point out one other thing on the front page of the Eye that I'm quietly confident that you would also agree that is a bit disconcerting, is that this story they've got here, they reckon is part of page 9. Police using AI tool that looks at people's sex lives and political beliefs. What the actual heck is that?
This is Palantir, isn't it? Palantir, which is the American organisation that they're trying to now give freedom to get records on every single American. But yeah, this is an AI tool. I mean, how are they looking at sex lives?
But apart from
I've got
anything,
a camera in my bedroom.
Well, I was going to say, you never know how they use it. So there's cameras all over the place, really. You know, from computers.
I don't think there's one in my bedroom, mind you. It would be
From
the most boring thing to watch you've ever seen in your life.
From computers to phones everywhere. They're all over the flipping place, who knows. But apart from anything, I don't want the police using AI for that kind of information. Not least of all because we actually know AI can a lot of the time get things wrong.
Yeah, but also, talking about your political beliefs, I think I'm quite public about them.
I was going to say, I don't need AI for me.
Don't need AI for that. Quick break, we'll be back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello. This is indeed Talk, and it is Petrie and Phil with you until the top of the hour. And again, the Daily Mail. It's no real surprise, actually, the front pages. I'm not really surprised by every single front page really covering this to some degree or another. Conspiracy of silence over race doomed thousands of girls.
And given what we were talking about just before the break there, as me saying, like, sort of, what do you think is the reason behind it? I'm not surprised that conspiracies are flying out. Don't get me wrong, I personally, as I know you do as well, much prefer to work in hard fact and evidence. I don't like the idea of conspiracy because all that does is it muddies the water, and it's not helpful at all. But I can totally understand why you've got a situation that is so blaringly obvious that should have been handled in a very, very different way, that clearly hasn't been handled in the correct way, and with no explanation as to why it wasn't handled in the correct way.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't blame people for coming up with a conspiracy.
No, of course, but there was a conspiracy of silence. That's the thing. There was a conspiracy between the police and the whether it was spoken of or agreed to or not. There was a conspiracy of silence because the police didn't respond in the way they should have responded. The council didn't respond the way they should have done. MPs, local and main, didn't, and the social services didn't. Schools didn't. So they all kept quiet for whatever. They may have had individual reasons to keep quiet, or they may have had one reason to keep quiet. But the point is that there was a conspiracy. I believe that there was, whether it was spoken of, unsaid, unagreed to, but each of those organisations preferred to stay quiet rather than say something.
And what makes it even more insulting is they're all taxpayer funded.
It is.
I mean, as if it couldn't get any more insulting.
This offends me to my absolute core that these little girls, which is what they were, and on some occasions little boys, were just thrown away. They were just thrown away by society. They were considered to not be worth it. And that is the greatest shame here. They were considered to not be worth it. And that's why I say that if they were children of assumed higher value, I think there would have been a different outcome. But these children particularly were just thrown away. They were just ignored and thrown away. But again, this is talking about public bodies covered up sickening evidence about Asian grooming gangs for fear of appearing racist. That's what the Baroness has concluded.
Wouldn't you love to think that the appropriate heads will roll for this?
Of course they won't. We know they won't. We know they won't.
They'll just
nobody
offer
ever pays for this.
Half-issued apology.
It's
and just
embarrassing.
to say, you know, to those who are affected, we deeply apologise. It means nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's too little, too late. The Guardian, again, Israel warns Iranians to flee as deadly air raids continue. Israel has complete control of the skies over Iran.
It has to be said, though, that at least Israel has warned the Iranians to flee, unlike Iranians who have issued no warning whatsoever to anyone in Israel, in particular in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, where they are really going hard with their retaliation.
The thing is, though, with Iran, when they set off ballistic missiles or whatever, they've got to go across Iraq. So there is a warning because we know that they've gone. But with the aircraft above Iranian skies, that's a different thing. So there aren't warnings.
But Iran aren't issuing those warnings.
No,
they're
but they're sending them up, and
missiles.
an hour and a half later, the drones may arrive.
I don't know if it's as long as an hour and a half, but even so, the point is that
in some cases it is.
At least Israel is saying it to people who are innocent in all of this: get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
And I think people know to do so. What I do find particularly provocative on the front page of The Guardian, and they know what they're doing all the way through the Middle Eastern conflict. The Guardian do this, and it's just not a surprise anymore, but I'm afraid that it happens all the same, and it is shameful, is that they've decided to go with a picture of This is what their quote on the caption on their picture. Iranians mourn during a funeral for military personnel killed yesterday by Israeli airstrikes. And this was in central Iran. But what is fascinating is that they choose that image rather than the Iranians who are celebrating this action. And there are plenty, by the way, who do this. There are plenty of people living in Iran, including all of those suppressed women and girls who live under the most brutal terrorist regime in the form of the Ayatollah and everything that he believes that they do. And they are celebrating this, and they're championing Israel to succeed with this, and not one person's covering it.
No, and I was saying that earlier as well, is that the answer to this situation, which is why Russia doesn't want it to continue. Russia wants a peace deal because Russia wants the Ayatollah to stay in command of Israel. If this goes on for much longer, there could be a popular uprising, and that's what needs to happen, actually, and to be supported this time.
And to get rid.
And to get rid of the regime. But if it came from the people, then it would future-proof Iran. And that's, if you look at Iran in the 70s, it just looked like a normal...
It's totally different.
It was like London. It was free.
I'm sorry, people bang on about free Palestine. I say free Persia, personally.
I absolutely agree. It's horrendous. But if the Iranian people do this time rise up again, they need support.
I was going to say, well, let's be very clear. The one lesson that should have been learnt about the uprising in Syria against the Assad regime is that the people who have risen up against Assad are not necessarily good people. And this is
I agree.
Really important
the Iranian
to stress
people
this.
Were to
So it's why that shouldn't be celebrated as much as the idea of the Iranians and true Iranian people rising up.
Just claiming their country back.
Yeah.
Daily Express, let's uncover a lot of truth in sex gangs inquiry. A rape gang victim has demanded every council and police force is investigated over the grooming. Sammy Woodhouse also called on PM Sir Keir Starmer to resign. She claims girls were sacrificed to avoid upsetting Pakistani and Asian heritage voters.
Whoa. When you put it like that, it's hard to argue.
Whoa.
Do you know, there's one thing, though, that on the front page of the Daily Express, true to their form, they, of course, can't get away without mentioning either the royals, which they have done, where they've got a picture of Princess Catherine, but they've also mentioned the weather, which, of course, is the other thing that they are quite famous for.
The Express is really famous for that. What
Britain will bask in 32 degrees Celsius heat wave by the weekend.
I won't be basking anywhere.
Oh.
I'll be hiding in the cool.
Oh no.
Yeah, I won't be basking.
I normally spend a fortune to get to the early 30s.
Particularly not near water, because they might try and throw me back in thinking I'm a whale. So that's not going to happen.
Stuff and nonsense. You're going voluntarily.
Yeah, let's have a look at the Times. I mean, this picture is bleached out here, but it is a fabulous photograph. Sir Keir Starmer is greeted by Chief Darcy Dixon of the Bearspaw First Nation after arriving in Canada for the G7 summit. It's an amazing picture. I love it. Absolutely love it. Also,
certainly shows up what Sir Keir is wearing.
Yeah, I mean that.
Did you see what he was wearing the other day?
Was he wearing a short sleeve shirt?
He was that, but also he was wearing trainers or something. It was very strange.
I think a man wearing a short sleeve shirt that's just wrong unless it's a t-shirt. That is offensive to me. Roll sleeves up or leave them down or whatever. Just don't wear a short sleeve shirt. Phil, Dave, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in and doing the papers for me. Now, though, it's over to you. This is a full hour of phone-in, and it is just you and me. There are no guests, there's nothing else, just a couple of breaks, and just you and me. And it's your chance to talk back, so I'd love to hear your voices. I particularly want to hear your view on this Baroness Louise Casey's report into grooming group-based sexual exploitation. And this is a really stark report, actually, of what happened and what has been going on with these grooming/rape gangs that have been taking advantage of girls in this country, and whether you think that an inquiry is going to make any difference, and what you think of the government's sort of U-turn on this, and do you believe it? Do you buy it? Do you think that children in this country will be safer and will be protected? Give me a call.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Hello, it is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and this is your full hour of phone-in, so it is your opportunity to talk back. So if you've been sitting there all day and you think, I've got something I want to say about these grooming gangs, these rape gangs, now's your chance. Now is your chance. I hear everybody out. If you're a first-time caller, maybe you've been listening for a while, you know that I'm fair and I will listen to you and I'll take your view. May not always agree, but we never fall out, not on this programme. So I don't think really we're going to fall out over this, because this whole situation with these grooming gangs or rape gangs has been so disgustingly handled by everybody in authority, from the very top to the very bottom, from councils to MPs to police to schools to social services, everything. The whole structure, a whole structure of our society that is there to protect the vulnerable. And you don't become much more vulnerable than a little girl or a little boy. And these rape gangs were allowed to continue with their violence and sexual abuse of little girls. And like I said, on occasions, boys. They were allowed to. And they were allowed to for fear of being seen as being racist. The police treated these little girls as if they were just throwaway rubbish. If they went and complained about it, the police took one look at them and thought, well, she's rough, or whatever. These girls largely came from poor backgrounds. They largely were incredibly vulnerable. They were not noticed at school. They weren't paid attention to by social services. And absolutely worst, they were completely ignored by the police. Treated like rubbish. In fact, one little girl, she was 15 and had been being raped for quite a few years by a gang. And when she turned 16, the police arrested her for prostitution. I mean, just let that settle for a minute. The police waited till she was 16 and then arrested her for prostitution. They were ignored, worse than ignored, worse than ignored. It is shameful. And it is equally shameful that no government has pushed for an inquiry, has pushed and fought for these children. Nobody's fought for them. They've had to fight for themselves. There was a dad of one of the little girls who knew where his daughter was and knew she was being raped, knew she was being abused, and he kicked the door down. He was arrested for breaking and entering. I mean, what happened? And most of this behaviour was either ignorance, stupidity, some malformed machoism from the police, believing that these 13-year-old girls were all little tarts. They asked for it. They were children. They're legally not allowed to ask for it. So even if they had asked for it, which they didn't, a grown man having sex with them, they are not legally able to give permission for that. So why was that okay? Well, they asked for it. They're not legally allowed to. So what happened? And now we've got Baroness Casey's report, which is so damning. It's that thick, by the way. I've got a copy of it on my desk. It's that thick. And the main thing that she points out, and this is what the papers have picked up on, is that the ethnicity of the perpetrators was never recorded. It's still only recorded in, I think, a third of cases now. These little girls were raped and they were treated like wayward teenagers or collaborators in their own abuse. I don't even really have the words for it. I really don't. Well, look, obviously after this report, the government has had to flip-flop, U-turn, eat its own words. So let's hear what the Home Secretary's got to say. I've got a few clips to play to you, but they are worth it. Just in case you've been behind on the story, you've been working all day and you've not heard these things. So let me just first of all say this. Yvette Cooper came out, that's the Home Secretary obviously, she came out with an apology.
On behalf of this and past governments and the many public authorities who let you down, I want to reiterate an unequivocal apology for the unimaginable pain and suffering that you have suffered and the failure of our country's institutions through decades to prevent that harm and keep you safe. But words are not enough. Victims and survivors need action. The reforms I've set out today will mean the strongest action any government has taken to tackle child sexual exploitation, more police investigations, more arrests, a new inquiry, changes to the law to protect children, and a fundamental overhaul of the way organisations work to support victims and put perpetrators behind bars.
Right, so finally caught up. Finally caught up. Yvette Cooper also acknowledged, finally, and it doesn't make her right-wing, acknowledged an over-representation of Asian and Pakistani men when it came to these gangs.
They identify clear evidence of over-representation among suspects of Asian and Pakistani heritage men, and she refers to examples of organisations avoiding the topic altogether for fear of appearing racist or raising community tensions. These findings are deeply disturbing, but most disturbing of all, as Baroness Casey makes clear, is the fact that too many of these findings are not new.
We knew that. They knew that. Everybody knew that. But they've got to wait for a report before they can say it. She also mentioned other parts of the audit and said it was damning.
The findings of her audit are damning. At its heart, she identifies a deep-rooted failure to treat children as children, a continued failure to protect children and teenage girls from rape, from exploitation and serious violence, and from the scars that last a lifetime. She finds too much fragmentation in the authorities' response, too little sharing of information, too much reliance on flawed data, too much denial, too little justice, too many criminals getting off, too many victims being let down. The audit describes victims as young as 10, often those in care, or children with learning or physical disabilities, being singled out for grooming precisely because of their vulnerability. Perpetrators still walking free because no one joined the dots, or because the law ended up protecting them instead of the victims that they had exploited.
And I gave you just two examples of when that actually happened, where the victims were accused of being perpetrator or being culpable in their own rape. But let's not forget that this government, I mean, this is what makes me so angry, that this government, we had this conversation not long ago, right, about this. And the fact that these girls were being treated in that, we've known this for a while. And Yvette Cooper is speaking as though this is the first she's heard of it. But goodness me, I just read this report and oh my God, this is terrible. That's what I'm hearing. Which is so much BS. Because you knew and I knew, so she knew. And let's never forget Keir Starmer's response when we were demanding a national inquiry into these rape gangs. And if you have forgotten his response, here's a little reminder.
Calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts.
Yeah, Keir Starmer, on the true facts. Facts are not racist. Facts cannot be racist. A fact is a fact. And to accuse people of jumping on a far-right bandwagon because they want facts, I don't even have the words. People like him are the problem. If the perpetrator of a crime is white, yellow, blue, green, orange, who cares? But the perpetrator of that crime being of that colour may be relevant. It may not. And if you see enough people of one particular group carrying out one particular heinous crime, it becomes more relevant. But the ethnicity of these men was not even recorded. It was known, but it wasn't officially recorded. So everybody was behind the curve. So yes, Keir Starmer, we do need the facts. Not your facts, the facts. So that's where we are. Embarrassing for them. Shameful. Shameful. Give me a call. Tell me what you think. 0344 499 1000. Let's speak to Linda, who's here in London. Hello, Linda.
Hi, Petrie.
Hi. What do you make of this?
Firstly, I'm not surprised that this happened at all. I grew up in the UK care system from the mid-80s to the early 2000s. The attitude towards particularly girls, because a lot of these girls were in the care system or were known to social services.
Yeah, they were.
Not all of them, but a high portion. And the way that you were nothing. You know, you would make a complaint about your own foster care and you were told, oh, well, we haven't got nowhere else to put you. Or, oh, well, have you tried, changing your behaviour? I was like 14, 15. I mean, nothing like we're talking about happened, but I'm just saying that I'm not surprised. And I think that this is, yes, we have got to look at the, are there certain communities where this is more prevalent? And if so, what are we going to do about it? Because it's all well and good saying we need to, record the ethnicity, so I can never say that word. Ethnicity, is that right?
Yeah.
I'm saying that right? Yeah.
I have the same problem with that word.
Oh, I can never say ethnicity of these people. Then it's all well and good knowing about it, but we need to do something about it. When I don't have a problem with going into communities and going, look, you've got a problem. Speak to the community leaders, go into the schools, go into the mosques, churches, wherever the issue might be, because otherwise knowing who these people are and what their attitudes are doesn't make any difference.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is the point, isn't it? And this is why the ethnicity, the gender, the whatever builds the image of a person or builds the perpetrator, it should have been recorded. It should be known. Because, if it was mostly women who were doing it, then that would be recorded, wouldn't it? If it was, whatever, you would record it. I mean, why it wasn't recorded is deliberate. It's deliberate.
My only concern with focusing on the ethnicity is actually ignoring a wider problem to some extent.
No, I agree with that.
And yeah. I think that ultimately, I mean, I remember being in foster care about 15. There was another girl who was about my age, maybe 15, maybe 16, and she was referred to as a child prostitute. Now, that shouldn't even be in anyone's vocabulary because they don't exist. There is no children that are prostitutes. They are abuse victims.
But why were the police? I mean, like you said, these girls, like I said, they were throwaway girls. If they had been of a different social standing, there would have been a different outcome. I'm sure of that.
Well, Petrie, we know that that's what happened. It was only when there was a girl that was considered to come from a good family that she was taken seriously by the police. Mm. And I remember, it's slightly different, but on the same kind of thing, I remember watching one of these 24 hours in police custody type shows, and it was about a group of young boys that had been abused by a man, and they'd gone to the police several times, but because, again, they were sort of, council estate kids that were seen to kind of, they were involved in petty crime as well, things like that. They were dismissed. And I remember when finally it all came out and they were taken seriously historically, like they were men, they were in like the 20s and 30s by this point. And one of the men that was being interviewed said, when they asked him, why do you think they're taking this seriously now? And he said, I think it's because as soon as they came to me and said, we're going to take this seriously now, I thought it was because somebody important had been abused. And isn't that interesting? But we were throwaway. At 16 years old, I was picked up from school on my 16th birthday. I was still at school. I was told, oh, well, you've got to leave your foster placement today because they need the bed for someone else. I was put in a hostel, four girls between the ages of 16 and 24. And there was men of, 40, 50, 30-year-olds, white, black, Asian, you name it, hanging around these hostels. Nothing was done about it. We weren't protected. Nobody cared. We were seen as the problem.
I mean, it is horrendous, isn't it? This throwaway, this attitude that the children from poorer backgrounds, or like you, who was a foster child.
It's a class issue.
It is a class issue.
It's a class issue.
Yeah. I mean, you've just got to look at Madeleine McCann to see that, right? How many girls will go missing a year? Do you think from the foster system or from the adoption, whatever, and nobody cares about them?
They didn't even take police reports.
I know.
I remember when one girl kept running away, they stopped taking police reports because they were like, oh, it doesn't matter. Nobody
It's just her. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's her again. And in fact, you'd hear that. I'd overhear conversations. And it would be, oh, it's her again. Oh, she's probably with so-and-so. Knowing that this person was a criminal or this person was a very much older man, nobody cared. We didn't matter.
That is just hideous, isn't it? I mean, look at the way Jimmy Savile got away with it as well.
Yep.
For so long.
Again, vulnerable young
girls. Yeah.
Yep.
In homes and in, I mean, just throw away. I mean, it is classist. How can we change that? How can we apply value to just being a human being? How do we change that, Linda?
I think some things have changed. For example, now you're in care till you're 18, not 16, automatically. And there are duties of care until young people are 21, 25 in certain situations. So I hope things have changed. But then we know that you saying about people going missing, I think I read a shocking statistic, and I can't remember the exact numbers. It was last year, and something like 40 to 60%, I think it was, of young people that go missing are in the care system.
Yeah, it is somewhere in that region. It may even be higher.
Yeah, and they're grooming gangs or they're another thing that we're not talking about.
County lines as well. County lines, yeah. You and I do share a brain, Linda.
The kids, but again, the boys, they're being treated as perpetrators. They're victims. Sorry, I'm really passionate about
this. I agree with you. And these boys on the county lines, those girls being taken off for, by these gangs and being used and trafficked around for sex. Yeah. And the boys are being used for county line. They're just throwaway kids. And they are being arrested and charged when they're being abused.
Well, I think they're branching out as well. We've seen an influx of young girls, quite pretty young girls, under the age of 25, being arrested all over the world for drug trafficking. There seems to have been a huge, well, I don't know if it's just being reported more.
No, it's definitely gone up. I did that story last week, I think. I did that story. It's a 52% rise.
I wasn't listening.
Oh, how dare you. But yeah, it was a 52% rise.
Wow.
So it's a huge rise. So it's not just that it's being overreported; it is happening, and I don't. It's so wrong that I can't think of the right words without swearing, which is why I'm struggling a bit. I'm not allowed to swear, but this is so wrong.
It is
that nothing. It's got to change at a very fundamental level.
And that's why I think it is important that we record ethnicity, but let's not focus on it, because I think we miss the bigger picture if we do that. We need to look at society as a whole rather than...
And why these girls are so throwaway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I absolutely couldn't agree with you more. I always agree with you, Linda. It's great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to go because I'm late to a break, but I will be back in just a moment.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and we are talking this morning about the inquiry, the national inquiry now that will take place in order to look properly at these rape gangs that have, it seems, been operating with impunity, certainly from years ago, such as Rotherham and Oxford and other places. And the reason they got away with it for so long is because there was, it would appear, according to Baroness Louise Casey's report, that people were afraid to be seen as racist. That makes no sense to me. A fact, I keep saying this because it's true. The facts cannot be inherently racist. You can use facts in a racist way, but a fact in itself, so the fact that these men were of Asian Pakistani heritage is not racist. It's a fact. It's also a fact that there are a lot of white people involved in these grooming gangs or rape gangs, whether they have been traffickers or organisers or arrangers or rapists themselves. I think ethnicity does matter, and it is time it was recorded when it comes, at the very least, to sexually based crimes. These little girls were throwaway. We just heard that from Linda. She herself was in the system and felt that she didn't matter at all. At all. Thrown away at 16. They were throwaway girls. Nobody cared enough. Often they were blamed for their own rape. Oh, well, you're, little tart. Or you walk around in short skirts. Whatever the horrendous misogynistic excuses were used by these police officers to justify their ignorance of the situation and lack of protection for these girls because they didn't matter. That's the truth of it. They didn't matter. And they should have mattered. They were children being abused by much older men in the most disgusting and heinous way. Some messages that I want to read before we go to Paul. Just want to read this. This government will now praise themselves as the only government to investigate when really they ignored these girls a couple of months ago. This is only being looked at because they've been forced to investigate. Hopefully all MPs, police, social workers, counsellors who knew and turned a blind eye go to prison for a very long time. I wish, but it won't happen. We know it won't happen. It never does. They'll just say, lessons will be learned. Oh, we've learnt a lesson. We won't do that again. No, but you'll do something equally horrendous to somebody else, some other poor group of people. Rachel says, I want to live in a country where we value and protect vulnerable people of all ages. I'm ashamed currently of the UK. I think needs to be exercised for this individual. I think that, look, Rachel, I want to live in a country where, as well, but I'm always being told that I'm a tree hugger. I want to live in a country where the vulnerable are protected and looked after, and the perpetrators of these evil crimes and the facilitators of them, and the police and councils and social services and schools, they all facilitated this. They all did. Whether they did it deliberately or not, whether they collectively decided to or not, which is what a national inquiry will tell us, they facilitated this behaviour. They allowed it to happen. They are all responsible for it, without doubt. Gary says, I don't believe for 1 second that yet another inquiry, although I welcome this one, will protect children, because I don't trust this or the previous government to inform the public of the full scale of this rape gang culture. This has been ongoing for 25 years and governments have failed to address and deal with it. British governments have failed British girls and women. Shame on them. And that is the truth of it. They are being failed. We are being failed. Sam has said, my sister-in-law was friendly with the girl arrested. Do you remember I told you about the 15-year-old who they waited till she was 16-year-old and then arrested her for being a prostitute? My ex-sister-in-law was friendly with the girl arrested. She was absolutely abused at the time on social media and her own town at the time as well, getting called a liar, etc. That poor girl went from abuse from men she didn't know to people she did. The government will never get it right. And that's from Sam in Lancashire. Thank you for that, Sam. It's horrendous. To be abused because the system didn't care for you, and then to be abused by the system? You couldn't make this stuff up. Kieran said, these rapists, find them, sentence them. Yeah. Ray said, my anger lies, I'm afraid, with Jess Phillips, who is the minister responsible, yet still did zero. There were very many, Ray. There were very, very many who are responsible. And I hope all of their names come out. I hope every single one of them is shamed by this. But I fear it won't be. Shall I take a break? Paul, I'm really sorry. Gabriella will talk to you now, but I'm going to take a very quick break because otherwise I'll get into trouble and you wouldn't want that. Be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey there, and a good morning to you. It's Petrie, and we're talking about the rape gangs and the government response to the rape gangs, finally. And the report that Baroness Louise Casey put out. And I've been asking you your views. Paul is in Wolverhampton. Hello, Paul.
Good morning, Petrie. How are you?
I'm very long time. Where have you been?
Oh, Petrie, I've had a lot on, believe me.
Have you?
Yes.
I hope you've still been listening, though.
Yes, I've still been watching and listening. I still do regularly. I've just had a lot on, family things, work things. My mum's very, very ill. Yes,
I'm sorry.
You wouldn't believe what I've got going on still, but I'm getting there, and I've got to, face it. Change of career, everything. But there's a lot going on.
Oh wow! Yeah. Well, listen, I send you all my love and a big kiss. So I hope it goes well.
Bless you. Thank you. You're always golden. My theory is this: I always think when something like this comes out and nothing's been done about it, there's something else behind it. I just get a feeling other people are involved up top. I know I shouldn't say it, and I'm probably naughty, but I just think when you know there's something going on, why aren't you doing something about it? Is it because you can't be bothered, or you're too frightened to say something? It's like, for me, like I said to you, Gabriella, when I was telling my point of view, why, when they find out who these people are, the first thing they should do, if they're not born in this country, not from this country, send them back. If they've got families with them, they will have to go back with them too. That is the price they will have to pay for abusing the people in this country. You are here, you live by our law and you live by our respect. You don't go around abusing our people. Yeah. So therefore you must pay the price.
I mean, listen, I don't disagree with that. I mean, especially with dual nationals, and the Daily Telegraph today saying asylum seekers and foreign nationals are involved in a significant proportion of police investigations with links to child sexual abuse. There is nothing that should keep them in this country. No, right, these asylum seekers, you're gone, and anybody else that you're associated with family-wise, and foreign nationals, absolutely. But the problem lies where it's a British national or somebody who doesn't have dual nationality.
Yeah.
Then what? If they're part of the same gang? I mean, I suppose you just throw away the key.
Yeah. Bring back banging. Bring back banging. I know it's a sore subject because of a lot of people, but because sometimes the wrong people get accused.
Yeah, I wouldn't go down that road, but I do agree with you that anybody who is a dual national or, like Shamima Begum or whatever, not allowed back in the country.
No.
So anybody who carries out something like this, a heinous level of crime, should go.
But it's funny that the guy that you just commented on about that Jessie, from Birmingham. Yeah. She was doing all these programmes going on saying, "Oh, we're going to protect women and we're going to do this and we're going to do that." You're as guilty as any. They should be brought, named and shamed in the papers. Said you did nothing. You failed the people of this country. They should be struck off.
Yeah, all the MPs that had knowledge, all the councillors that had knowledge, the police, this was a disgusting betrayal on every single level. But I fear, Paul, that nobody's going to pay the price. There will just be lessons learned, a £100 million inquiry, a national inquiry, and all we'll be told is lessons will be learned. Unless it's a fully public inquiry, which is what it should be. If it was a fully public inquiry, then we would know everything, but we're not going to know everything. So
no, I mean, the funny thing, I keep quoting this saying, and I didn't like the woman particularly, and I didn't agree with everything she did. But if Margaret Thatcher was in power now, a lot of the things that are going on now, she wouldn't have stood for. She wouldn't have had none of it. She'd have had it sorted.
I don't know what she'd have done with these grooming gangs, but I have a feeling that, they wouldn't have been able to get away with it. Paul, it's lovely to speak to you. Listen, you take care of yourself, my love, and I can't wait to hear about your new career. So when everything's clearer, you give me a call. Right, let's turn now to Jerry, who's in Burton-on-Trent. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Petrie. It's lovely to speak to you again.
Lovely to speak to you. How are you doing?
Oh, well, it's always a delight to listen to you. It coasts me off to bed about 1 o'clock every time.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Monday to Wednesday the treat. And I love your very, very thoughtful words about the way you really reason out a topic so well.
Oh, thank you.
You've got a style that's not only professional, but it's so engaging. So we always look forward to Monday to Wednesday. Perhaps a bit more would be nice, Petrie.
Making me blush. But,
come on.
Well, you have to speak to the boss about that.
Yeah, you're marvellous. But Petrie, I was going to say about this subject, really, it's the term institutional failures on so many levels. As a former foster carer, I can tell you that the number one thing within the childcare system is that the image of the authority is paramount. That's been told to every single social worker. I noticed by your, I think was it Jessie, the girl who'd been in care, her experiences are just so typical.
Oh, Linda, yeah, isn't that awful? Thrown away at 16 like that.
Well, you see, the thing is, I can tell you from the many years that I was a foster carer, The original thought was once you're 18, that's it. That's changed a bit.
Yeah.
But the fundamental thing that was always said, particularly with the residential care homes, usually places where the youngsters were more difficult to manage, their view was, well, if they go out, there's nothing we can do. So they would call the police would bring them back, and in a way, I don't know if you realise this, but social services really tell the police how to act, what to do, and that kind of thing. So when it comes to removing children, they tell the police. I mean, I'm sure the police get so fed up of having to pick up the same child because they go missing over and over and over again. It happens all the time. And it's a huge waste on police resources. But, of course, social services will say, well, if a child refuses and goes up, what can you do? You can't tie them to a chair, can you? And so the general belief was, well, they make their own choices. I can recall them on one occasion saying to a young lad I fostered for only a brief period because they asked me to have him for respite. They said to this lad, because he said, why do you keep moving me from place to place? Well, it's your attitude, isn't it? You've got to change your attitude. It wasn't a case of listening to him, sitting down and engaging. And you ask yourself how many times a social worker spends time with those who they care for.
Those poor kids.
I asked the social worker, look, I said, I know you're busy. I know you've got a huge caseload, but as he barely knows your name, could you manage a 10-minute phone call once a week? No, that couldn't happen. If you want to complain, Petrie, they're fine. You can complain about the police, you can complain about the health services to social, that's no problem. Complain within the system itself, and you become very unpopular.
Really?
As a foster carer, if you don't toe the line, you get deregistered. You're self-employed, and you've got no income whatsoever if suddenly the hatch comes down. And I mean, I could give you an
example. They actively discourage complaints and.
Well, yes, they totally. They say it's not a good idea to be high profile, Jerry. I hope you realise that. And high profile means, stamping your foot and trying to rattle the cage a bit. And so foster carers are told, in effect, well, this is the way it's going. You've got to comply with it, or there are alternative options. And the complaint system against the department is so impossible. I mean, really, you'll find that the few social workers who really work hard are burnt out. But the ones that get the promotion, of course, are the ones that show precious little interest. And incidentally, after 18, there isn't a social worker looking after the young people. It's a pastoral worker who barely dips in and dips out. And they're much less skilled people, much less engaged. So there's all that happening. And in fact, I can recall so many times saying to people at the residential units, how come you're allowing these girls to stay out so late? Oh, well, we put rules in place, we can't do much more apart from just ringing the police, we can't do much more than that. And so, it's bound to fail. And the care system isn't ever likely to be overhauled or reformed because there are too many senior management amongst the whole structure of the thing. The county councillors can't get them to toe the line because they don't really understand how the system works. So it's a bit like a civil service controlling the MPs at a lower level indirectly. It is really rotten to the core. And, these charities make me sick when they come up, oh, they're so caring. But they do nap all as well, Petrie. It's all image building. It's so frustrating. But you don't get any reward for sticking up for the youngsters. You don't get any reward.
It's so depressing, isn't it? I mean, I think with childcare as well, this kind of level of, you just follow the money. Like you said, there are too many people too high up making too much money out of these vulnerable kids, and they don't want you to rock the boat. And I find that so heartbreaking that somebody decent like you, who might want to say, look, if we did it this way, it might actually help the child is being told to be quiet.
Do you know, a body of us got so determined about it. It goes back to the days when I was in Norfolk. We had a really vocal team of us in a local association that we got together. We went right the way through our MPs. We went to see Edward Simpson himself, and we got all the platitudes. Oh, thank you so much for coming. Oh, it really makes a difference. And you think, no, it didn't. Nothing happened, Petrie, even taking it that far. The Children's Commissioner comes out with all these lovely words. Oh, things must be done. 48 hours ago, it didn't matter to Keir Starmer, did it?
No.
But all of a sudden it does. And you think, you know, Mrs. Balls gets up and speaks today, and you think, is this the same person who'd made speeches previously?
Yeah. That's why I don't believe them, right? They've proven themselves to be untrustworthy. You know, Keir Starmer suddenly going, oh, well, now we've seen the report. Oh, yeah, now we've seen Baroness Casey's report. Yeah, we'll have an inquiry. But he knew about all of this and said that if we were concerned about it, we were far right.
Yeah, it is. It's beyond incredulous.
Honestly.
And you have to say, when does the government actually take notice of the people? You think, well, who can you go to? What can you do? And when a social worker will say to me, but Jerry, you don't realise, look, you know, if these youngsters go off and do these things, you can't lock the door. You can't stop them. If they want to go, you've got to let them go, you know. And I'd say, well, hold on a minute, a bit of extra support.
Sitting down with them, explaining them, support. I mean, no girl wants to be going out there at the age of 13 or boy and being raped, right? That's not what they're choosing to do. The fact that it's been facilitated by people who don't care is where it's wrong.
Oh, they used to make us do these logs, but I used to do reports. I said, look, daily logs about what they had for breakfast is a lot of old nonsense, but that's the sort of thing they wanted. And I used to do proper, full-blown reports on a weekly basis. I'd send those off, and they never read them, of course, not one of them. And I said, it's important that you guys, we're supposed to be a team around the child. You need to understand and build a relationship. But you'll never find a youngster in care. There are exceptions where it's, if you like, a success where the child goes into care at 5 and it's just well looked after and so on. But you ask the foster carers, they'll say, oh, we leave them alone and they leave us alone and we're getting on fine. It's usually despite the system that it works. But when I've had strategies that have worked, undiagnosed autism for 10 years, and the youngster's with me for 3 weeks, and I said, look, I can see these traits. Why on earth have you had this lad known to the system for 10 years and it's taken this long? You know, it's all about working genuinely together with a real spirit, and it isn't about money all the time. This is always the old excuse. If you have this relationship and the child feels there's a social worker that cares, that really matters. And so I have had successes, though, but I must say that it's been, despite the system, some risk to myself because, you know, raise your profile and you can have a dodgy time. And yet, despite retiring from being a foster carer, Petrie, it doesn't leave you. You know, you know, I still have a few of the youngsters keep in touch. And I've always said, you know, we spend our lives together when you're with me, when you were fostered, if you like. But after that, you know, no one's going to take that away from us. That time together will remain as part of our lives together.
Oh, thank God there are decent people like you, Jerry. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you explaining the system, which I suspected was the way you described it, but it's horrific. It's heartbreaking to hear it. Jerry, you're a good man. Thank you for calling. I've got to go. I've got to take a very quick last break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. We're still discussing the rape gangs and new discoveries that asylum seekers and foreign nationals are involved in a significant proportion of live police investigations linked to child sex grooming gangs. An official report has warned. Joanna has said, "Hi Petrie, national inquiry. In what world is it okay that we're letting them mark their own homework? Our society has become rotten to the core. We can't trust any of them, and it obviously goes right to the top. Now Keir Starmer has called this national inquiry, so there can be no more discussion or accountability, and it certainly won't get started until after the 2029 election. I smell cover-up. As much as I don't like him, Dominic Cummings does name names right to the top, so he must have proof or get sued." Yeah, that's what we need, is a whistleblower. I'm afraid. Let's talk now to Jason, who's a new caller from Worcester. Hello, Jason. Nice to meet you.
Hello, how are you? All right?
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you for calling. What do you make of this rape gang culture that we've been living with?
Yeah, my point of it is, because it's happened in my local area quite a lot, that they're trying to make out that it's sort of low level, from news agents to taxi drivers to who have been feeding the girls with drugs and alcohol and enticing them, and this goes a lot higher than this. In my area, a few local councillors have been linked, the police have been linked. It's a big, and this is why no one wants an inquiry, because this is going to open a can of worms. And it's got to open a can of worms. The thing is, everything's swept under the carpet. Within a few weeks, will we still be talking about this? Probably not. We'll be talking about a war somewhere else. This will be brushed under. Heads need to be rolled here. Something needs to be done drastically. Not just, oh, we're going to do something in the future. Now, people need to be sentenced who took a blind eye to this, whether it's the police, whether it's the social workers. Something drastic's got to be done. The local school, girls' school at my area, a couple of years ago, we were all sent a letter to say, watch your children when you're picking your girls up from school, because there have been sightings of cars pulling up, trying to entice them into the cars. And nothing was ever said in the local media, and that's going on everywhere. It's just frightening that no one has got I want to swear, but has got the kahunas to do something about this and stand up and say what it is. It's how is this happening in our country? How have we put up with this for so long? It's frightening, it's embarrassing, and there's a lot of people like me are very angry about this.
I mean, it's shameful. It is absolutely shameful, and I'm with you in some cases. I think it probably does go higher. I think that there has been, but this isn't a public inquiry. You see, this I don't know whether we'll really get to see, because public inquiries are extremely expensive. This is a national inquiry, which is, I think, different. I think it is, as Joanna said, they'll be marking their own homework, going through reports and revealing what happened at the time. But it's not a public inquiry where we get to see day by day the results of this sort of inquiry. And I wonder if it has been stopped short of a public inquiry because there will be senior people in certain areas that are not just culpable of standing back and watching this happen, but have some part to play in it.
There's no way, 100%, that certain people in areas, councillors, MPs, blah, 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 they know exactly what's been going on and what is still going on now. It's not like it happened in the 70s. Yeah. It's not a Jimmy Savile situation. This is happening now, and we're still taking a blind eye now. I don't know where this goes, really. As I said, in a couple of weeks there'll be another subject. But and we'll all forget about this. Well, you know, a lot of people won't, but it's just what's happened to these thousands and thousands of girls is just so upsetting. And I don't know even how we got to this situation where the police and other authorities have took a blind eye. Heads have got to roll for this. Top-level police.
But you know they won't, Jason. That's the problem. We know they won't. We know we've seen it before with you know, people who are the head of social services where Baby P was killed. What's her name? Shoesmith. She went on. She left, but then went on to get a great job somewhere else. These people never pay. This is the problem. They never blooming well pay. Never.
Well, if they resign, they get a full salary pension.
I know.
It's not a real hardship. But where do we go?
Yeah, they get their pensions as well.
What's the point in anything then? I mean, in this country, we've got a thing where if anything really bad happens, we all get together and light a candle. And I think that is not enough.
No.
This has got to go. I don't know how, as you said, it's going to be a cover-up, but that is just making people more and more angry.
Yeah, because it's systemic. It's systemic. So we don't know where to turn. That's the problem. If we don't trust the system, this is where everything falls apart. And we don't trust the system. We don't trust the system to report properly on itself. We don't trust the police to give us the truth about what's actually going on or what went on during Rotherham. Who decided on the silence? Who you know, was it a deliberate thing? Did they all, you know, conspire together, or was it just individuals who conspired to keep it quiet? We'll never know.
Well, why aren't the other parties, Conservative and Reform and other people, coming out that this needs to be a public inquiry then? Why aren't the people, not just the MPs, but why aren't people in the country calling out, this has to be a public inquiry?
Because I think we did. I think we asked for one, or it was asked for. And bear in mind, actually, just another point,